Chapter 1795. There was no doubt that this was the Temple of Light. Mayfair looked at the road behind her subconsciously. Behind her was the trial road. But at this moment, she could no longer see the thick fog that had obstructed them. She felt that she had not walked for a long time. In her impression, the time spent on the trial road seemed to be about the same as the time spent on the normal road up the mountain to enter the Temple of Light to worship. But how could this be? This was really the trial road. In the village, the villagers were forbidden to come in contact with it. Other than the forbidden area outside, it was the most dangerous place. Just as Mayfair was distracted, she felt her arm was suddenly pulled by someone. Then, her body moved to the side. It was Luocio. "Don't talk. Someone is coming." Boss Luo pulled Mayfair to the side and hid. Then, he looked outside. Behind a stone pillar. There were many patterns carved on the pillar. It looked more like a totem pillar. At this moment, Mephistopheles was shocked and also stuck his head out. He saw that there were indeed two figures not far away. At this moment, they were walking around the outer walls of the temple. They are the temple's guards, especially the one on the left. His name is Malik. He is very powerful and is the captain of the temple's guards. Fortunately, they did not discover us. Otherwise, we would be in trouble. Mephistopheles patted his chest lightly and heaved a sigh of relief. It looks like they are just patrolling. Boss Luo took a few more glances and smiled. Let's wait for them to leave before we find a way in. They were too close. Mayfair was a little nervous. In her memory, she had never been so close to a vision. But at this moment, the captain of the Temple of Light suddenly pointed at the place where Boss Luo and Mayfair were hiding. He said in a deep voice, "Who is hiding there?" Mayfair was shocked. She instinctively wanted to move back. But at this moment, Boss Luo suddenly pressed on her shoulder and shook his head. Mayfair was shocked. Boss Luo gestured for her to keep quiet, indicating for her to continue watching. At this time, the guard drew his weapon and tentatively walked toward the stone pillar. But before he could take 2 steps, the guard captain behind him suddenly launched a sneak attack. The sharp blade easily pierced through the player's body from behind. "Captain Malik, you?" The team member did not manage to struggle much. His mouth was even covered by the captain of the guards, Malik. In the end, after a few struggles, his body went limp and fell to the ground. Seeing this scene, Mayfair desperately covered his mouth with both hands, afraid that he would make a sound out of fear. It was just that she was really scared, and her body couldn't help but tremble. But in the end, she didn't move, and even the sound of her breathing was forcibly stopped. Soon after killing the team member with a sneak attack, the captain of the guards, Malik, quickly looked around. Then, he directly carried the body of the team member and quickly walked in through the back door of the temple. He, Captain Malik, he. She was really scared and couldn't speak clearly. She tightly grasped the clothes on Boss Luo's arm, and her beautiful face was as white as paper. I saw it too. Boss Luo looked at Mayfair, deep breaths 3 times. Mayfair subconsciously took deep breath. It didn't take 3 breaths, but only 2 breaths, and her emotions were slightly stabilized. Why did Captain Malik kill him? Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "Why did you escape from the tribe?" Mayfair said without thinking, "To avoid being a sacrifice. Because the current god is fake and it is actually a monster that eats people." "Could it be? Do you still want to go in?" Mayfair's expression changed slightly. She gritted her teeth and said in a deep voice, "I want to go in. If Captain Malik is really doing this for the monster in the temple, I have to expose him. Otherwise, in the village, more people will be harmed. I can't just watch. I need evidence to expose them." "Even if the people in the village want to use you as a sacrifice?" Mayfair shook her head and said, "Of course I hate those who insist on using me as a sacrifice. But there are other people, and the children in the village, they don't know anything. Do you want me to hate them too?" Do you want me to hate some people but not care about the people I like? I can't do it. But you did want to escape, and you have been escaping all this time. Boss Luo said indifferently, we found you in the forest. You were on the way to escape, and you were injured. Mayfair smiled bitterly and said, I admit that I am weak, but just now, when I saw Captain Malik kill people, I actually wanted to save him. But because I was scared, I didn't even dare to move. She hugged her body tightly. I saw Captain Malik take out his weapon. If I made a little movement or made a sound to alarm them, maybe Captain Malik wouldn't have succeeded. I told myself that, but I couldn't do it. The one who killed people was Captain Malik, but I, who didn't save him, was also an accomplice. You have to understand that if you made a warning, you will also be in danger. Boss Luo said slowly, you are not an accomplice, you are just protecting yourself. When people are in danger, they will protect themselves. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Mayfair took a deep breath and said, but it is not something to be proud of. I think I really shouldn't run away anymore. Thank you for sending me here. I will walk the rest of the way by myself. There is no need to involve you and your friends in this danger. In that case, let's go in. Boss Luo stood up and extended his hand to Mayfair. But you. Mayfair moved her lips and asked softly, why are you helping me? We are now adventurers. Boss Luo smiled and said, since we are adventurers, we naturally have to take risks. Don't look at me like this, I should be quite powerful. She reached out her hand subconsciously and felt that it was a hand that brought her warmth and peace of mind. But just as Mephistopheles was about to touch him, she suddenly retracted her hand. Instead, she pressed down on her knees and slowly stood up. She took deep breaths again and again until her emotions were completely stabilized. Then, she said seriously, okay, let's go in together. Although he was surprised, Luochio did not say anything. He turned to look at the back door of the temple. If we go in from the back door, we might be discovered. Is there any other entrance? But at that moment, Mayfair suddenly pushed out her palms. She seemed to be chanting something. Instantly, a soft green light covered Boss Luo's body. He quickly fell to the ground. Mayfair quickly went forward and supported Luochio. Then, she gently placed him behind a pillar. Thank you. But this is something I have to face. You wait here for your friends. She looked at the sleeping face in front of her and subconsciously reached out to touch it. However, his fingertips paused for a moment. Separated by a thin layer of air, Mephistopheles slowly took a deep breath and whispered, even if I encounter any danger, when I wake up, it will still be today. I will forget. She sighed and then suddenly stood up. With a wave of her hand, the weeds began to grow wildly and covered Boss Luo's body. After that, Mayfair unsheathed the sword at her waist. In a flash, she was already at the back door of the temple. She gently pushed open the door and leaned in. At that moment, behind the totem pillar, the lush weeds were slowly degenerating to their original state. Boss Luo, who was sleeping, had opened his eyes. This was a maze, a 100% maze. The most common type of maze in the game Hero versus the Evil Dragon. The dim passageway, the gloomy stone walls and floor, the seemingly endless forks in the road, and then there was the treasure chest monster. Dr. Girls looked at the treasure chest that was biting his palm with all his might and looked at Mr. Snakel expressionlessly. You said that the second level doesn't need to fight, it's just a maze. Before this, they had encountered several waves of maze monsters. The battle was not very fierce, and the danger level of the monsters was completely within the range they could bear. However, when they cleared the Minotaur Guard, they consumed too much physical strength, so the battle was not fierce, but fatigue had spread. At this moment, Mr. Snaff probably felt a little embarrassed, so he silently pushed away the treasure chest beast that was biting Dr. Gillis' hand. Then, he chopped down with his sword and killed it. Then, he threw a bottle of recovery potion to Dr. Gores. Drink it when your life is almost gone. Don't waste it. TSK. Dr. Gores disdainfully slapped the recovery potion back. He took out a bottle, twisted it open and drank it. He had a lot of recovery potions. Not only him, but Tina and Sneeve also had some good ones. These were the spoils of war that they picked up after a lost temporary captain. Dr. Gores just felt that Sneeve's behavior of using flowers to worship Buddha was too shameless. But then again, they had gone through the first level of the guards, and now they had entered the second level of the maze. However, they did not encounter the lost temporary captain along the way. This was something that everyone had no choice but to do. The temporary captain was actually still at the back. Could it be that they have retreated and returned to the starting point to wait for us? Dr. Gores had to make such a guess, and it was easy for the other two to agree with him. However, they had already gone deep into the second level of the maze. It was unrealistic to just leave like this. Doctor, have you thought of a way to leave this maze? Miss Maid seemed to have a strong confidence in Dr. Gores. She was not worried at all at this time and asked quite easily. Dr. Gores snorted twice and said indifferently, almost. After a few more passages, we should be able to completely find the pattern of this maze. Speaking of which, although this chessboard world is incredible, the level of civilization in this world is not high. The construction level of this maze is naturally not high. Damn it! Why does this path seem to have been walked before? Why does every path look the same? That's good. Tina nodded and did not speak. Let's continue, Sneeve. Dr. Gores thought at this time and suddenly said, since you have nothing to contribute, just carve a mark on the wall so that I can find the pattern. Mr. Sneeve sneered directly at this time. Tina had to whisper to Dr. Gores quietly, Doctor, he started to carve a mark on the wall not long after he came in. When did this happen? Why didn't I notice it? Dr. Gores could not help but feel surprised. Miss Maid said, Doctor, you were leading the way in front, so you didn't notice it. But I noticed that we didn't encounter the mark left by Sneeve, which proves that we didn't go in circles. Doctor, you're so good. Child's play. Dr. Gores shrugged. I stopped playing this maze game before I took the first sip of blood. Oh. So this path has not been walked before. Fortunately, it's fine. The passage was very quiet, so the conversation between the two naturally fell into Sneeve's ears. He simply shook his head and walked to the corner, using his weapon to carve a mark on the wall. But just as he was about to leave, Mr. Sneeve's face suddenly changed slightly. He suddenly touched the wall and rubbed his palm on the wall. What are you doing? Dr. Gores walked over in confusion, but he saw Sneeve rubbing the wall harder and harder. Not long after, in the place where Sneeve rubbed, there was a mark on the wall that had been there for some years. This was obviously not the mark that Mr. Sneeve had just carved. It should be the mark made by the testes who entered the maze before. Miss Maid thought for a while. No. Mr. Sneeve was shocked at this time. This is the mark made by Geralt. What did you say? Dr. Gores was startled. The mark made by your servant. Are you sure? I won't be wrong. Mr. Sneeve said excitedly. Only Geralt can use this symbol. He said that this is the ancient language of his people, the language of Asgard. This symbol should mean a direction. The ancient language. Dr. Gores frowned at this time. So, the wound on the back of the bull-headed guard in the first level was also left by your former servant, that is to say, Mayfair is lying. The three of them said in unison. Hashtag 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 PS. 7084ths. Chapter 1796. Castle Banquet Hall. It was still quiet here. Except for the occasional conversation, everyone's attention was focused on the chessboard, or rather, the position and distance of the servant cards on the chessboard. Right, there was also the sound of the dice hitting the chessboard when he threw the action dice. It was as if it had some kind of magical power that made him want to continue throwing it. It made people hope that they would be able to keep throwing and not have to wait for the next round to come. The bell in the castle suddenly rang, disturbing the tranquility. Mr. Varley smiled. I didn't expect time to pass so fast, it's already 12 o'clock. Midnight. Butler Lisa seemed to be quite sensitive to time. After Mr. Varley said the time, he directly looked at Mr. Nelson and said, Nelson, please prepare some food, it's time for lunch. I think so too. Mr. Nelson nodded without hesitation. How to put it? Although he was still in the game, he had already given the right to act to Miss Maid, who was the master captain. Therefore, his temporary absence had no effect on the following game. At most, he couldn't let Dr. Gores, as his servant, know what happened in the banquet hall. Please wait a moment, I'll serve you delicious food soon. Nelson looked at the crowd and said politely. Miss Gong Lina looked at the prizes of the winner of the game, the crops in Mr. Varley's private farm, and smiled. I didn't expect this game to last so long. This is really unexpected. If it's interesting enough, I can keep playing. Mr. Varley smiled faintly. Keep having fun and add color to the dull life. Miss Gong Lina responded with an elegant smile, but she was puzzled. A long time had passed since she entered the castle to attend the banquet. In other words, her coachman had been in action for a long time. Although Varley's castle was luxurious and spacious, a few hours was enough for an ordinary person to walk a few laps around the castle. However, she didn't receive any news until now. At this moment, Chef Nelson slowly pushed the cart with the appetizer, Blood Fountain, out of the banquet hall. He pushed open the side door of the banquet hall. Just as he was about to leave, there was a sudden barking sound in the banquet hall. It was the barking of Black Hound and Black Dragon. It was fast, loud, and even ear-piercing. Miss Gong Lina frowned slightly. She was a person who liked peace and quiet. Such an ear-piercing sound made her instinctively resist. A trace of murderous intent even flashed through the eyes of the eldest daughter of the Tsimisai family. Please wait a moment, Mr. Nelson. Yu Yi suddenly called out to the chef who was about to leave. What's the matter? Miss Maid smiled and said, If possible, can you prepare some food for it? After all, it's Mr. Sneeve's pet. Mr. Sneeve is working hard for us in the chessboard. I think we should take care of it. Chef Nelson paused for a moment and then nodded, of course. The side door of the banquet hall slowly closed, and Black Dragon and Black Hound gradually fell silent. However, their gazes were fixed on the side door that Chef Narson had just left through. The game continued. It was Mr. Wally's turn. A rather ideal number appeared on the die. Mr. Wally smiled and suddenly opened a function card in the preparation area. I'm going to activate this jump card. He flipped the card and threw it to the center of the chessboard. This is a card that multiplies my action points by 6. In other words, the distance I can move this time is 30 squares. While Mr. Varley spoke, Kaladi's servant card directly landed in the roaring forest, at the speed of a grid jump. Wally, it seems that you really can't forget this forest. Miss Gong Lina said with a fake smile. Aren't you afraid that the punishment wheel will appear again? There are many ways to play this game. Mr. Wally didn't care about his sister's sarcasm and said calmly, As long as you know what kind of opponent you are facing, you can think of a way to deal with it. Miss Lost Traveler, you don't mind, right? This initiative of mine. Of course not. Miss Maid smiled and said, The world is originally driven by people with ambition. If you lose this ambition, perhaps the world will still be in a primitive state. Mr. Varley, you might as well think about it. When our servants meet again, see if there is still a possibility of an alliance. If so, Mr. Wally smiled faintly, it's too unfair for my sister, Gong Lina. Miss Gong Lina said indifferently, It's okay. You see, Mr. Lisa is still single. Lisa, do you want to team up with me? Miss, you must be joking. Mr. Butler said indifferently, I'm afraid it's too late. That's true. Miss Gong Lina smiled and said, After all, there is such a distance. I think I'd better be alone. It's actually quite interesting to wander around the battlefield and pick up small monsters. Then, let's start the life reduction roll. Mr. Wally pushed the die in front of Miss Gong Lina at this time. It's still starting from you, my sister. She didn't care and rolled the dice casually. At the current stage of the development of the chessboard game, it was very difficult to kill a servant by reducing their life points. After all, it was very difficult to kill a servant like what Mr. Wally did. Beep, 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 the die hit the chessboard, and made this kind of sound again. Mayfair was lying. The three-man team in the depths of the labyrinth of the second stage of the trial fell silent after coming to this conclusion almost at the same time. Sneeve, are you the only person who touched this game plot twice? Dr. Gores suddenly said. I said. Mr. Sneeve shook his head and said, at that time, I entered the elf tribe through Mayfair. But at that time, I sent her directly to the village. From beginning to end, she didn't wake up. Although it's Mayfair, obviously, my experience before and after is different. Why did she lie? Is the plot necessary? Dr. Gores frowned, but I saw her tone when she spoke. It didn't seem like she was talking. If she can deceive us, then this elf lady's acting is extraordinary. In fact, if she is really lying, she has successfully deceived everyone. The maid thought for a while and said, this time, if Mr. Sneeve didn't find the exclusive mark left by his previous servant, we wouldn't have discovered this. Silence again. For a moment, Dr. Gores shook his head and said, now, it's just a waste of time to think about this problem. Sneeve, since your servant passed through this trial, does it mean that if we follow these previous marks, we may succeed in passing this maze? The chance is not small. Mr. Sneeve thought for a while. This is indeed the mark left by Gerald. Well, then it's decided, follow the mark left by Gerald. Dr. Gores reorganized at this time. He loosened his neck and said, I suddenly have a very strong feeling, perhaps the elf lady we met is now at the end of the trial, waiting for us. Why? The maid couldn't help but ask in confusion. Dr. Gures casually said, isn't it usually like this? After the pitiful female character's true colors are discovered, the adventuring protagonists will see her at the end of the checkpoint, and then some indescribable things will happen. It seemed to be reasonable? Mr. Sneeve shook his head. He reached out his hand to touch the old marks left on the wall, and muttered to himself, what else did you leave behind, except these marks, except for the wounds on the Minotaur guard? Even now, even after so many years, am I still under your protection, Gerald? Well, the method, you have a good understanding. You can memorize this method so quickly, and you can even use it. In the forbidden area of the roaring forest, Nan Xiaonan listened to Big Rock's voice. She didn't know where it came from, but she was very relaxed. How bad could a void immortal's understanding be? How bad could it be? Moreover, according to the so-called visualization method taught by Big Rock, the process of sensing the slate fragments in her hand was surprisingly smooth, without any hindrance. In the process of visualization, she could even vaguely sense a very faint sense of closeness from the fragment of the slate. This was probably what Big Stone meant when he said her Nan Xiaonan's body was the descendant of some kind of bloodline. But according to Nan Xiaonan's knowledge, even if she was the descendant of some bloodline, it was probably many generations away, to the extent that she couldn't trace the origin. There is a fragment nearby. Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, just now, when I was learning how to visualize, I vaguely felt a similar wave coming from the other side. You're quite lucky to be able to let me sense a new fragment so quickly. That fragment has been here for a long time. Big Rock said indifferently, whether you can learn the visualization method quickly or not, I plan to tell you and let you collect the fragments here first. Maybe it was the counterattack of her previous ridicule? The old demon of the academia in its child world. Lady shrugged and suddenly laughed. I've learned that visualization method. Aren't you afraid that I won't come back here after I find the other fragments and completely activate the core of the chessboard? You'll come back. Big Rock didn't show any emotion. Nan Xiaonan was stunned, but at this moment, she once again felt the wave of another fragment. It was quite strong, as if it was right in front of her. It directly told her that the location of this fragment was where the big rock was. However, this wave of fluctuation soon disappeared, as if it had been blocked. Nan Xiaonan was clever, and at this moment she sneered. I see. No matter how long I find it, I'll definitely come back for the last fragment. Go. Big Rock said indifferently, I don't like to owe others. If you can really find the other fragments and come back here, I'll give you a chance. Nan Xiaonan tossed the fragment of the slate in her hand, and then smiled. I always think that opportunities are not given by others, but fought for by oneself. Even if, see you later, Mr. Big Rock. This somewhat slender figure slowly disappeared into the forbidden area. In the depths of the forbidden area, a huge round rock suddenly shook a few times. Then it became calm again. There was no more terrifying roar coming from the forbidden land, but there was a slight sigh. Even if I can get out, such a long time has passed, the war. I'm afraid it's already over. Mayfair was moving forward slowly. In fact, every elf was good at moving forward. They lived in the forest and learned how to hunt since they were young. They learned how to hide their breath, so that they could get close to their prey more easily. They were also very sensitive to smells. The smell of blood on the clansmen killed by Captain Malik was now the best guiding light for Mayfair. She had been to the temple many times. She followed the elders of the village and entered the temple to worship at a fixed time every year, so she was familiar with the structure of the temple. Mayfair soon caught up with Captain Malik. At this moment, he was still carrying the dead clansman on his body. Mayfair didn't dare to get too close. She knew that Captain Malik was the bravest among the younger generation in the village, and he was even a popular candidate for the next village chief. Until Captain Malik finally stopped in front of a huge and heavy door. This was the inner sanctum of the temple, the place where the gods live. Mephistopheles held his breath as he watched Captain Malik gently push open the door. He then carried the corpses of his clansmen and lowered his head as he walked into the inner sanctum. The door was not completely closed. There was a trace of light coming out from the gap of the door. At this time, Murphy's footsteps were lighter, and she slowly approached the gap of the door. She began to hear some slight sounds. It seemed to have a trace of anger. Malik, how many times have I told you, I need fresh food? He's already dead. My lord, it's still hot, I just killed it, it's very fresh while it's still hot. Trash! Mayfair's expression changed slightly at this time, and in a flash, she climbed to the ceiling above the door, only to see a figure directly break out of the door at this time, and then directly hit the wall. It was none other than Captain Malik. ######PS. As usual. Chapter 1797. Captain Malik spat out a mouthful of blood with a panicked expression. This was obviously not the bravest elf in the village that Mayfair once knew. Therefore, Mayfair was also shocked. But at this time, Captain Malik, who was on the ground, naturally saw Mayfair, who was supporting her body and hiding above. They directly looked at each other. Mayfair's face turned pale and she almost fell down. But Captain Malik at this time looked at the inner temple through the door in a panic and said with a trembling voice, tomorrow there will be offerings sent to the temple. Wait. I'm hungry, I'm really hungry. Okay. I'll immediately find something fresher, alive, it must be alive. Remember, don't let me down again, otherwise, you know the consequences. Bang! The door was directly closed at this moment. Captain Malik sighed and directly fell to the ground as if she had lost all her strength. Mayfair at this time did not dare to move for a moment. Captain Malik had clearly seen her, but why did he at this time? Captain Malik raised her head again and stared at Mayfair's eyes. She was even more scared. But at this moment, Captain Malik actually made a gesture of silence. Mayfair could not help but be startled. It was still the temple, but it was slightly away from the inner temple. This was the place where the village used to baptize newborns. If there was nothing important, it was basically not used. It could be considered a relatively remote place. Mayfair at this time looked at the silent Captain Malik with vigilance. This was the place he led her to. The two sides kept a distance of arm's length. Mayfair even put her hand on the place where the weapon was placed and never let go. "Okay, let's go from here," Captain Malik, who had been silent for a while, suddenly said. "The back of the temple of baptism leads directly to the back door of the temple. If you leave from there, it will be dark soon. Take advantage of the guards outside to find an opportunity to leave the mountain. For you, this shouldn't be difficult. After all, you are his daughter. He was once the fastest runner in the village. I know that you are actually very fast as well. You let me go?" Mayfair looked at Captain Malik in disbelief. She kept recalling the things about Captain Malik. This Malik was 40 to 50 years older than her and was still a young elf. She heard that he was relatively ordinary in the past, but after he became an adult, he showed considerable courage and was recognized as the bravest guy in the younger generation in the tribe. Finally, he directly passed the selection and became the captain of the temple guards. Captain Malik was kind to everyone and was very good to everyone. Even when she was finally chosen to be a sacrifice to serve the gods, she heard that Captain Malik had privately opposed it. Before today, Mayfair had even been secretly grateful to Captain Malik of the Guardian Squad. However, this gratitude had long since vanished into thin air after seeing Captain Malik personally kill her clansmen. She was even incomparably fearful of this person who hid his terrifying face. However, in front of the inner temple gate, Captain Malik did not directly catch her. Instead, he still wanted to let her go, which made Mayfair a little confused. Captain Malik, could it be that he was not an accomplice of the monster disguised as a god in the inner temple? However, he had clearly killed the members of his own guards with his own hands and brought their corpses into the inner palace, wanting to feed that terrifying monster. "I heard that earlier today you secretly escaped." Captain Malik frowned and said, "Since you have already escaped, why did you come back?" "I am back, isn't that what you want?" Mayfair sneered at this time and said, "Otherwise, where would you go to find a living sacrifice and send it to the gods, to the monster? A living one, right? How much did you see?" Captain Malik's face changed and looked at Mayfair with a trace of murderous intent. She was already prepared. At this time, she directly took out her weapon and waited. "I saw it all. Sneak attack from behind to kill our people, and bring the bodies of our people into the inner temple along the way. I saw it all, and I saw it very clearly. Malik, I will definitely tell this to the whole village. Even the monster pretending to be a god. You shouldn't have come back." Captain Malik sighed. "You clearly could have escaped. Why didn't you escape? You have no parents, and there is nothing here for you to care about. Leaving the tribe, leaving the forest, the outside world is not good for you, is it not good for you?" "I once thought about it," Mayfair said in a deep voice, "but if I leave, more of our people will be killed and eaten by you, by the monster in the temple. I can't just leave it alone. There is no other way." Captain Malik shook his head. With a clang, he took out a sword that was longer and sharper than the short sword in Mayfair's hand. "I don't want to let others know about this, so you should know what I am going to do next. Are you going to surrender directly, or do you want me to really do it?" Mayfair had already given her answer with her actions. She flashed and appeared behind Captain Malik like a ghost. However, Captain Malik seemed to have expected it. He casually inserted the sword in his hand behind his back and directly blocked Mayfair's attack. After her attack failed, she did not pull away. Instead, she began a storm of powerful attacks. However, the sword in Captain Malik's hand transformed into a screen of light and easily blocked it. Even in the face of Mayfair's concentrated attacks, he did not even move half a step. Like a bolt of lightning striking the ground in the darkness, Captain Malik swept out with his sword just as Mephistopheles was about to be exhausted from her powerful attacks. The immense power behind the strike sent Mephistopheles flying. Even her weapon was knocked away. Mayfair fell to the ground. She could not help but taste blood in her throat. She hurriedly wanted to get up, but at this moment, Captain Malik's sword was already pointed directly at her throat. "You are very fast, but your strength is too weak and your technique is even worse," Captain Malik said indifferently. "From the moment I told you to leave, you already shut down and did not say anything. Just leave directly. Jingji obviously will not let your path be any easier. If you want to kill me, then kill me." Mayfair gritted her teeth. "However, if you want to bring me in front of that monster alive, I would rather commit suicide here." As she said this, Mayfair actually suddenly slammed into Captain Malik's arms. At her waist, there was actually a palm-sized knife hidden. However, Captain Malik effortlessly swatted Mephistopheles away with the flat of his sword. At this time, Mephistopheles directly stabbed his own throat with the small knife in his hand. Captain Malik's eyes flashed. He was even faster than her. In an instant, he flashed in front of Mayfair and directly knocked her unconscious with the hilt of his sword. Thump! The elf lady instantly collapsed on the ground and lost consciousness. Such a strong personality, really not like an elf at all. Captain Malik shook his head, but directly carried Mayfair and walked out of the baptism hall. At this moment, the sunlight was about to disappear, and the sky had completely darkened. The guards on the temple on the hill began to light up the surrounding lights. She woke up on a stone bed. The moment she woke up, Mayfair instinctively wanted to escape, but very quickly, she was directly pulled back by something. Her legs. At this moment, her legs were already shackled and connected to the iron chain. The iron chain was nailed to the stone bed. She simply could not break free. Mayfair looked around in horror, and finally saw Captain Malik in the corner of the room. At this moment, Captain Malik raised his head and looked at something. A soft light sprinkled on his body, but because of the screen, Mayfair could not see what Captain Malik was looking at, but she guessed that he should be looking at the window sill. He was looking outside the window, as if he was thinking about something absent-mindedly. Even the sound of Mayfair struggling after waking up did not disturb him. "Why not send me to the inner temple and hand me over to that man-eating monster?" Mayfair said coldly at this time. "It fell asleep," Captain Malik said indifferently. "You are lucky. In fact, it is very easy to fall asleep, but after waking up, it will be hungry. When it needs to eat, it will become particularly irritable. So, I can only keep my life until it wakes up." Mayfair was silent. "Don't worry, I won't send you tomorrow." Captain Malik still did not look at Mayfair. Because of the escape, the village has not been found, so the priest candidate was temporarily changed. "Who is it?" Mayfair was shocked. "It is the little daughter of Eric's family," Captain Malik said expressionlessly. "She looks very happy. Tonight, the village is preparing a celebration for her. She is not even 80 years old this year." "You actually—" Mayfair struggled agitatedly again, and her delicate skin was directly damaged because of this. "She will be sent to the temple in the middle of the night." Captain Malik suddenly stood up. "I am going out to patrol. Don't think about leaving this room. I have released a barrier outside. With your strength, you can't open it." At this time, he looked at Mayfair and said indifferently, "Of course, if you want to kill yourself, I will not stop you. It is just taking care of one more corpse." "Wait. You come back. Malik. You come back," she screamed. However, Captain Malik had already left the room and locked the door. Mayfair struggled to no avail. She could only lie on the stone bed in frustration. She said to herself, "You can't give up. You have to escape from this room and save Uncle Eric's daughter. You can't give up, you can't give up." She gritted her teeth and sat up again. Then, she held the shackles with force. She straightened her foot and tried to pull it out of the shackles. The metal had already worn through her skin and even her flesh. Finally, with a miserable cry, Mephistopheles successfully pulled her left leg out. The price she paid was that her left ankle was now bleeding profusely, to the point where it was badly mangled. At this time, her whole body was soaked in cold sweat due to the pain. Her face was as white as paper. Even when she moved her left foot that was successfully pulled out, she felt a piercing pain. However, time did not wait for her. Mayfair looked at the shackles on her right foot again. This time, the pain almost made her faint. She failed. That kind of inhuman pain, when it happened for the second time, became a tiger that blocked the road. Mayfair couldn't help but curl up and cry secretly. She didn't cry out loud, but her tears soon mixed with sweat, dripped on the stone bed and then melted. Suddenly, something fell out of her clothes. It was that incomparably sweet candy. Mayfair trembled at this time and held the candy up. She was distracted. After her mind wandered, Mephistopheles took a deep breath and unwrapped the candy. She broke the candy in half and put half of it into her mouth, while the other half was wrapped in the candy again and kept close to her body. Feeling the sweet taste in her mouth again, Mayfair carelessly wiped the stains on her face with her palm. "Mayfair, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't taste bitter. Mayfair is sweet," she muttered to herself. Then, she trembled, gritted her teeth, and began to whip her right foot again. The hard metal shackles directly began to scratch the flesh on her ankle together with the skin. Little by little. Finally, she fell under the stone bed. Mayfair gasped for breath. She only felt the burning pain in her feet now. Even the air could bully her bloody feet. She rested for a moment and began to slowly crawl on the floor. It was just that her physical strength was astonishing. Now, she was so tired that she just wanted to faint directly. There was a light in front, which should be the light from outside the window. Most of the light was blocked by the screen. Captain Malik was sitting in this place just now. Mayfair crawled here, thinking that if there was a barrier on the door, she could climb out of the window. She subconsciously looked at it. What she saw was not a window at all, but a coffin placed vertically. The light was actually emitted by the coffin. Luminous stone. This coffin was inlaid with a few luminous stones. This was a relatively easy material to obtain in the roaring forest. "Malik, have you been looking at it all this time?" Mayfair gritted her teeth and crawled to the coffin. Then, she grabbed the coffin and climbed up with difficulty. She hesitated, but in the end, she opened the coffin and opened her eyes to look inside. Empty. Empty? There was nothing inside. Mayfair opened her mouth. In the end, she could only ignore the empty coffin and look at the door of the room. She couldn't open it. No matter what she did, she couldn't open it. She had already tried every method to dispel the curse, but the barrier released by the door completely exceeded her strength. Just as Captain Malik had said, she couldn't leave the room no matter what. Time had already quietly approached the time when a new sacrifice would be sent to the temple. Mayfair's heart was incomparably anxious, and because the injuries on her feet couldn't be treated effectively, she had lost too much blood. She could only bandage them simply, but the blood had completely seeped out. Mayfair only felt that her eyelids were getting heavier and heavier. She felt that she could fall asleep at any time. Maybe after she fell asleep, she would never wake up again. Maybe after she woke up, it would be a new today. Well, if we return to the morning. Mayfair's vision gradually became blurred. Then no one will die. As long as I can't walk out of today, no one will die. This is also good, but, will I forget? She slowly took out the remaining half of the milk candy in her arms. Her fingers unwrapped the candy with difficulty, and finally, she slowly put the remaining half of the candy into her mouth. She waited for the sweet to melt. She didn't want to forget. Right at this moment, many black patterns suddenly appeared on Mayfair's body. The patterns covered her entire body in an instant. In the end, many shadow-like arms strangely extended out from the blossoming patterns. The arms directly wrapped Mayfair up like a black giant cocoon. Finally, her body began to sink little by little. It was a darkness that spread out under her. She couldn't hear any sound. Her eyes had completely lost their luster, like an empty shell. She couldn't even taste the taste in her mouth. Crack! A soft sound at this time, but at this time it startled something. It startled everything strange here. It was as if the light from the fire had dispersed the darkness in an instant. The shadowy arms on her body began to tremble randomly, and then quickly returned to the blossoming patterns. At this time, the patterns also quickly began to shrink. Finally, all of the patterns disappeared into Mephistopheles' forehead. Her eyes regained a trace of luster again. At this time, the enchanted door had been opened, and someone appeared in front of her. I found a key outside, so I opened the door to see. "Are you okay, Miss Mayfair?" The elf lady cried out at this time. She cried and said, "I'm sorry, I ate the candy you gave me. Can you give me another one? Hashtag PS 7184. Chapter 1798. The potions dropped by the monsters in the game chessboard had no effect on the original creatures in chessboard. However, Boss Luo found some healing potions in this room. Mayfair recognized the effects of these potions, and according to her, the potions here were relatively complete. This was not a particularly strange thing. The room belonged to Captain Malik. As the captain of the temple guards, he lived in the temple for a long time. It was inevitable that the temple guards would be injured during their daily training, so it was reasonable for the captain's room to prepare more potions. I can do it myself." Mayfair looked away. At this time, Boss Luo was using some kind of potion to clean the wound on Mayfair's foot. Miss Elf's face was very pale because of excessive blood loss. "Okay, you can do it." Boss Luo nodded. He never forced anyone to do anything. But Mayfair could not help but be startled. Was this really the case? Shouldn't he be persistent at this time? She had to treat the wound silently. In fact, the pain made it difficult for her to think about anything else, but she still remembered one thing. How did you come in? I have already. Speaking of this, Boss Luo smiled casually and said, "Miss Mayfair, it should be a dangerous thing to leave someone outside the temple." Miss Elf could not help but feel embarrassed. At that time, Captain Malik and I would be far away, so I didn't have time to move you to a farther place, and I also covered you well. I'm sorry. I was bitten by a snake, so I woke up, Boss Luo said with a serious face. Snake? Mayfair was shocked, and even her hands subconsciously stopped. She blamed herself and said, "Damn, why didn't I think of a snake? It was too dangerous. How are you? Are you poisoned? Look for it, there should be some herbs here that can detoxify. Why are you laughing?" She saw Boss Luo's expression was like a smile. Mayfair reacted and said angrily, "You lied to me. You are not injured at all." "Then we're even, Miss Mayfair." Luochio smiled slightly. "How could it be like this?" Mephistopheles laughed bitterly. Then, he sighed and said, "But you saved me again. The person who saved you last time was Dr. Gores." Boss Luo shook his head. Mayfair said in a bad mood, "You always feel that it is difficult to accept other people's gratitude." Boss Luo didn't express his opinion. He began to look around the room that belonged to Captain Malik. Naturally, he noticed the coffin made of luminous stone placed against the wall. After Mayfair opened it, she obviously did not close it, so it was obvious that the coffin was empty. Besides that, there was nothing special about the room. Of course, the cold stone bed and the shackle mechanism on the stone bed seemed out of place. Probably, under normal circumstances, no one would like to rest on such a bed. Did you really find the key outside and open the door?" At this time, Mayfair had already bandaged her wounds. The effects of the medicine she found in Captain Malik's room were unexpectedly remarkable, even better than what she knew. The pain had even been effectively alleviated. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before his legs regained some mobility, right? Yes, it's this one. Boss Luo opened his palm, and there was indeed a key in his palm. How can it be? Mayfair said in disbelief. Captain Malik imprisoned me here, and even cast a barrier on the door. How can it be opened so easily with a key? No, even if it could be opened with a key, why would he throw the key outside? Maybe we can find him and find out. Boss Luo thought for a while. You're right. Oh, right. Mayfair quickly asked, when you came in, did you notice anything? Boss Luo said, most of the guards were gathered at the entrance of the temple, or went there. So when I came in, I did not meet any of the guards here. The entrance? Oh no. Mayfair said in shock. They must be going to welcome the team that went up the mountain. After I escaped, the village chose a new sacrifice and sent it up the mountain. No, I have to save her. That child is innocent. With that, Mayfair quickly stood up. But her injury was only effectively relieved, not healed. The moment she landed, the pain exploded again, making her want to faint again. She almost fell to the ground. Boss Luo reached out and supported her. Obviously, it's hard for you to do anything in your current state. I'm so useless. Mayfair was depressed. You're already very powerful. Luochu shook his head. Under such circumstances, you can still escape from the shackles. Leave the rest to me. But you, originally, the purpose of taking the trial road was to go to the temple's god spirit. Boss Luo said casually. Now we're just continuing what we started before. If you don't mind, I'll carry you. If you hesitate, it might be a waste of time. I'm very light. Mayfair's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Boss Luo smiled. He looked around the room and finally found a blanket from the closet. He put it on his back first, then he squatted down and signaled Mayfair to climb up. The elf lady climbed up stiffly on the back that was especially wide because of the blanket. She found that she couldn't feel the other person's skin because they were so close. She even had a strange feeling. Why is it so hard here? It's because I'm wearing an invisible piece of armor. Boss Luo said casually, then, it's time to act. You should hurry up and recover your strength. Mayfair's hands subconsciously hugged a little tighter. Invisible armor? But she had a feeling that even if there was no invisible armor, this blanket would still be put on. He didn't want to take advantage of her at all. He seemed to be a prince. It really works. They were already at the exit of the maze. They had been following the marks left by Geralt and finally succeeded in passing the second level of the maze. At this time, the three of them walked out of the maze and once again entered the white fog. The maze disappeared directly. Mr. Sneeve seemed to have a lot on his mind at this time. Are you worried about the last level? Dr. Gores frowned at this time. According to the situation of the previous two levels, I have already believed that your servant did indeed pass this trial. So, how to pass the third level, you first tell me. The third level, you will encounter a statue. Mr. Sneeve said slowly, there is only one question. If you answer it correctly, you can pass, but if you answer it incorrectly, I don't know what will happen if you answer it incorrectly. Your servant didn't tell you? Tina couldn't help but ask curiously. Mr. Sneeve shook his head. Gerald didn't specify what the question was and what the answer was. He just said that he passed, and then he passed. At that time, I was anxious to join my companions, so I didn't care too much. Dr. Gores seemed to be talking to himself. The first level is courage, so you will encounter the powerful Minotaur guard. The second level is wisdom, so it is a complicated maze. The third level is a test of the mind. There is only one question. She knew that the correct answer would definitely be a positive one. The trial road, courage, wisdom, mind. A good mind is really old-fashioned. It seems that we don't have to worry too much. Maybe the third level will be easier to pass. Let's go, we should be able to reach the temple soon. Miss Maid suddenly said at this time, Mr. Sneeve, the statue you said, is it like this? Her voice was a little dignified. In the direction that Miss Maid pointed at, the thick fog instantly dispersed, revealing a straight passage. At the end of the passage there was a statue of a woman. The female statue was blindfolded, her hands were crossed on her chest, and she was kneeling. Her whole body was slightly tilted forward, but strangely, there was a stone chain around her neck. There was only one part of the chain, and it was straight up. The statue as a whole looked like a person who was pulled up from the top with a chain around her neck. I heard the question. Miss Maid screamed in a low voice at this time. I heard it too. Dr. Gores also frowned at this time. Mr. Sneeve's face changed slightly. Obviously, he also heard the question at this time. Dr. Gores suddenly said at this time, "What question did you hear?" Miss Maid opened her mouth at this time, but immediately closed her mouth tightly, as if she wanted to say something. Mr. Sneeve was even more silent. Dr. Gores had to smile bitterly. It seems that I was wrong. This level is not easy to pass. And, probably each of us heard a different question. Or we are even more unwilling to mention it to others, right? Tina and Mr. Sneeve still didn't say anything. Dr. Gores suddenly said at this time, "Do you want to give up this level, Doctor?" Miss Maid looked at him in surprise. Dr. Gores said indifferently, "I intend to give up this level. I won't go on the following road. If you are interested, you can have a try. I will bless you here." "No. I must go up." Mr. Sneeve suddenly became very excited at this time. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the weird blindfolded female statue, and walked past it quickly. But soon, Mr. Sneeve saw Dr. Gores and the maid Tina in front of him, who were looking at him with a shocked expression. To be exact, Mr. Sneeve, who had just walked past the statue, was now walking from behind Dr. Gores and Tina. The space was folded. Dr. Gores opened his mouth at this time. Mr. Sneeve gritted his teeth, turned around, and rushed back quickly, but this time, he came back from the front again. He didn't give up and walked around randomly. But no matter how many times he walked, he finally returned to Gores and Tina. "It seems that unless we answer the question, we will be trapped here forever." Dr. Gores looked at the blindfolded female statue and muttered to himself, "Why are you blindfolded? Well, so, it seems that Captain Malik didn't really want to kill you." In the passage inside the temple, it was so quiet that only the footsteps of Boss Luo and the conversation between the two could be heard. Mephistopheles had already told her how she had been captured. She had even mentioned that Captain Malik had clearly discovered her when she was right outside the inner temple. However, he had not exposed her and had even planned to let her go in the end. "I don't understand it either," Mayfair said doubtfully. "He wanted to let me go at first, but after I said a few words to him, he changed his mind." "You told him that you saw him kill his own people with your own eyes," Boss Luo said slowly. "He changed his mind after hearing this." "You're saying that when I appeared at the door of the inner palace back then, Captain Malik didn't realize that I had followed him here?" Mephistopheles thought for a moment and said, "He thought that I had snuck in and just happened to appear at the door of the inner palace. He thought that I had only heard something but didn't know what had happened?" "That's the only explanation, isn't it?" Boss Luo nodded. Mayfair was more doubtful, but logically speaking, he could have let me go if he didn't know. But since he knew that I found out about his crime, he should have killed me, right? But he didn't kill me, he even imprisoned me. This doesn't make sense at all. "We're here. We're here. Where are we?" Mayfair raised her head subconsciously, and then her face changed in shock. "This is the inner temple?" The place where the gods hibernated was the place where she met Captain Malik officially. How did she get here so quickly? It was the same when she walked the trial road. How did she arrive at the destination directly? Although the guards went to the main entrance of the temple to welcome the team that sent the offerings up the mountain, this was too smooth, wasn't it? "Hey, wait, you opened the door just like that?" Just as Mayfair was shocked and panicked, Boss Luo pushed open the door of the inner temple without hesitation, which scared the elf lady so much that her heart started to beat rapidly. She even felt that she was about to suffocate, and her mind was blank. She could only stare blankly as the door opened bit by bit. Through the light of the lamps, everything in the inner temple began to come into her sight. He saw a woman in white with her eyes covered by a golden cloth. She was sitting on a huge chair in a dignified manner, not moving at all. "Gods!" Miss Mayfair muttered at this moment. Chapter 1799. The door finally opened completely, and everything in the inner hall was completely reflected in their sight. The air was filled with a faint bloody mist, and naturally, there was also the smell of blood. The place where the god lived was not bright and even looked gloomy. The walls, the floor, and even the pillars of the inner hall were intertwined with root. They were like blood vessels that were pulsating rhythmically. If one looked carefully, one would find that the source of these roots was actually the blindfolded woman who was sitting upright. It was her feet. Her feet were like tree roots that were rooted on the floor. At this moment, Mayfair almost knelt on the ground when she saw the god. She even knelt down, and her eyes were full of too many information. Awe, shock, doubt, fear. "She doesn't seem to know that you are here," Boss Luo said calmly at this time. I don't know why he said you, instead of we. Mayfair didn't even think carefully about whether this sentence was inappropriate. She just opened her mouth and said subconsciously, I don't seem to feel the breath of the goddess life. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "You said that you saw the conversation between Captain Malik and the monster in the inner hall?" "I'm sure." Mayfair nodded, "but it doesn't seem to be here now." Luochio then asked, "Miss Mayfair, you said that because you saw the monster pretending to be a god, and then it swallowed the sacrifice you sent up the mountain. Can you tell us the specific situation you saw? Logically speaking, if there is nothing, you shouldn't come to the temple, right?" Mayfair looked at the motionless female god in fear and nodded hesitantly. "Yes, except for important days, the people of the tribe are not allowed to enter the temple. But I was actually a trainee of the temple guards." "A trainee? Sorry, I didn't tell you before." Mayfair nodded and said, "At that time, as a trainee, I was sent to the temple and had been receiving training. During that time, I lived in the temple. Of course, as a trainee, I was not allowed to enter many places and could only move within a limited area. Actually, during that period of time, I've always been very obedient. Every day, other than completing the training mission, I would return to my room and never wander off. I'm about to complete the training mission and become an official member of the Guardian Squad. This is a very high honor in the tribe. Because of this, I often couldn't sleep in the days when the training was about to end." Mayfair laughed bitterly. "Perhaps I was too excited at the time. The day before the end of the training, I was unable to fall asleep. My mind was filled with thoughts of the end of the training the next day and being promoted to an official member. I don't know why, but all I wanted to do was go outside. I've thought about it. I've been on the mountain for quite some time, but there are still many places I haven't been to. So," Boss Luo smiled and said, "you broke the rules you've always followed on the last day?" I knew that after the second day, I would be able to openly patrol the other parts of the temple. Mayfair sighed. "But at that time, I couldn't control my rebellious impulse. Do you know? I walked alone in those forbidden places. In the darkness of the night there was a unique charm. I think I won't feel this feeling again after I become an official member." Gradually, I unconsciously avoided the patrolling guards and went deeper and deeper. Finally, I came to the inner temple. "I see light. It's the light that's coming from this door," Mayfair said with a pale face. "I knew this was the place where the gods lived. At that time, I wanted to leave immediately. But at this time, I heard a scream. Then, a figure suddenly fell out of the door." At this moment, Mayfair covered her face with both hands, only revealing her widened eyes. "She's covered in blood. I recognize this child. She was the child I sent up the mountain during the training. I even talked to her. We even encouraged each other. She was my good friend. She saw me and even reached out her hand to me. She wanted me to save her. But I didn't. I was stunned. My mind was blank and my strength seemed to have been sucked out. I could only look at Myliv like a stone. She was slowly dragged in by something. Then, there was her scream. In the end, there was no sound. I ran away. I ran back to my room without a care in the world. The next day, Mayfair said, the next day, I didn't participate in the final training. I left the temple without permission. They thought I gave up the test. Because of that, I was imprisoned by the tribe. I told them what I saw in the temple, but they didn't believe me. No one believed me. I was imprisoned. Then, one day, the village chief came to me and told me that I had been chosen by the shrine and was going to be the new sacrifice. She sighed slowly. I knew that no matter what I said, no one would believe me. How could they believe that the god they had always respected was actually a man-eating demon? All along, everyone thought that being chosen to become the sacrifice and enter the temple was the highest honor. We never thought that becoming a sacrifice was a horrible thing, because we all knew that the so-called sacrifice was a gift from the god. We could enter the god's kingdom because of it. That was the ideal place for us elves. But who would have thought that it was not the case at all? I gave up on proving myself and silently waited for an opportunity. Finally, on the day before I was sent to the temple, which is the today that I have been experiencing, I found an opportunity and escaped from the village. Then, I escaped into the forest. You know what happened after that. So, you didn't enter the inner temple and see everything clearly. Boss Luo said. Then, when you entered the door just now, how could you be sure that she was your god? Because I have seen it. Mayfair said seriously. We were born and grew up. All along, every festival, we would go up the mountain to worship. The god would also appear and pray for us. Thus, we have all seen the god's appearance. Now, seeing her appearance is enough to prove it. A demon must have snuck in here and even made the god look like this. Then, it pretended to be her. Captain Malik must also know about this because he has been looking for fresh food for the demon. These roots must be the demon's curse to the god. No, I have to save her. After saying that, Mayfair walked quickly to the blindfolded woman who was sitting upright. She even easily reached the blindfolded woman and reached out to grab her hand. There is warmth. The god is not dead. Mayfair suddenly shouted in surprise. After saying that, she bent down and intended to carry the female god out of the chair, but at this moment, she seemed to have discovered something and screamed again. Mayfair was so scared that she stepped back and finally tripped over the roots on the ground and fell to the ground. She looked at the god on the chair in horror. Because of her movement, the god's body was no longer dignified. Instead, it was crooked. What did she see? What she saw was the god's back. Her back was actually covered with dense roots. At this moment, the blindfolded woman's body was already crooked. The golden cloth on her face suddenly slid down. She saw a pair of blindfolded eyes. It was blood-red and had no pupils, and the seated female deity's body seemed to have come alive. She suddenly stretched out her hand, and her palm suddenly turned into rapidly extending tentacles that directly wrapped around the female deity. Mayfair was shocked and desperately struggled. She looked back in horror, only to see that Boss Luo was also completely entangled by the roots on the ground. It had become a huge cocoon. Mayfair was even more frightened. Her neck was completely strangled by the roots, and she was almost suffocated. She could not say anything. Perhaps she would be strangled to death like this. However, the roots had unknowingly stopped shrinking. She still had difficulty breathing, but she could feel that the roots had really stopped moving. It seems that a little mouse has run in. She heard a voice. She instantly remembered this voice. This was the voice that had spoken to Captain Malik, the demon that pretended to be a god. Mayfair looked at the voice and saw a figure slowly walking out from a door behind the god's chair. A man. His skin was slightly pale, and his appearance was very neat. He walked out slowly, and even used a handkerchief to wipe his lips, as if he was cleaning up after a meal. Demon! Demon! The elf lady squeezed out a voice with difficulty. Demon! The man folded the handkerchief he used to wipe his mouth and hung it on his chest pocket. He opened his arms slightly and said indifferently, "Look at me, compared to the goddess in front of you, who looks more like a monster. It must be you. You're the one who cursed the gods. You made the god become like this." Mayfair was furious. "It's you who has been eating my people. I remember now. It's your smell." The man smiled slowly and said, "You are the child standing outside the door that night? I heard from Malik that after you went down the mountain, you went everywhere and told the elves what you saw. I had no choice but to let you become the chosen one. I heard that you have escaped. Why did you come back? Isn't it good to leave? Of course, I don't mind you coming to me." As he spoke, the man slowly walked up to Mayfair. He reached out his hand and gently touched Mayfair's cheek. He smiled and said, "I think you must taste pretty good. It's a pity that I've only just had my fill. Although the taste isn't that great. But it's all right, I can wait for the next meal." "You don't touch." Mayfair didn't finish her words. The roots wrapped around her instantly climbed up and directly sealed her mouth. The man then looked at the other person in the inner hall, Boss Luo, who had been wrapped into a big cocoon behind Mayfair. He slowly walked over and said with a smile, "You know what we're going to eat next. I wonder what the next meal will be. I'm really looking forward to it. This feeling of knowing what's going to be revealed is really exciting." Mayfair struggled desperately. Her eyes were full of eagerness. The man had already walked to Boss Luo's big cocoon. But at this time, he suddenly turned around and smiled. "Oh right, I forgot to tell you. Your god was actually dug out by me from the quiet forest at the foot of the mountain. It is the monster you mentioned." Mayfair didn't believe it. But what she saw in front of her made her believe. The dignified god, her face, her body, at this time, had turned into rough tree bark. "It's quite surprising." The man's eyes were full of ridicule, right? So, he ignored Mayfair at this time and turned to the big cocoon in front of him. The roots on the big cocoon loosened little by little. The man's eyes were full of expectation. What is it, a young and beautiful child? Or a masculine and righteous warrior? The man narrowed his eyes. Or a lost sheep in panic? Finally, the roots had been untied, and the man could clearly see the appearance of the prey he caught. A young man with black hair and black eyes, a calm young man. Boss Luo stood there, not panicking because of being trapped. When the man was looking at him, Boss Luo was also looking at the mysterious man. Although it was somewhat unexpected, the man in the inner hall looked sideways at this time. After a while, he gently frowned and said, "You are a servant? Don't you know me?" Boss Luo smiled and said, "We have met before, Mr. Varley." Mr. Varley. The man who appeared in the inner hall of the temple was the owner of the castle, one of the heirs of the Tsimish family, Varley Tsimish. "Well, you are indeed a servant." The man, Mr. Varley in front of him, nodded faintly at this time. "However, although you are a servant, I am not the Mr. Varley you have met." Boss Luo was curious. "Oh? Could it be that there are two Mr. Varys, or rather, the two are actually twin brothers?" "That's a secret." The Mr. Varley in front of him smiled. "And most importantly, you will never know what the answer to this secret is. Although you can come here, it will probably give the other me a headache, but the headache will soon disappear. This is another perfect game." As he spoke, Mr. Wally's face turned cold. "I've changed my mind. More food." As soon as he raised his hand, the intertwined roots in the inner hall shot out in an instant. They were extremely sharp, as if they could pierce through everything. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of roots had directly pierced Boss Luo's body. But at this moment, these sharp roots actually started to bend. It was as if they weren't stabbing into soft skin, but rather hard metal. "You?" Mr. Varley was startled. Immediately, Boss Luo's body flashed with colorful brilliance, and a set of radiant sun-like armor directly covered his whole body. And that big, holy light sword. This set and this sword are. Mr. Varley was shocked and subconsciously took 2 steps back. He suddenly felt very anxious. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual. Chapter 1800. Everyone had a sense of anxiety, but some people were born with a strong sense of anxiety. Mr. Wally knew that he was that type of person, a vampire. He didn't want to, but he had no choice. He could only cover up his innate awakening with a calm look. In short, he was as calm as an old dog on the outside, but he was flustered inside. Facing an opponent who was as steady as an old dog, Mr. Wally quickly recovered from his shock and returned to his mysterious demeanor as the owner of the castle. Many years ago, there was a lucky follower who also obtained this set of equipment, which always surprised me. Mr. Wally stood with his hands behind his back, and this accident appeared again today, which really surprised me. I heard about this from Miss Tina. Boss Luo said casually, "It seems to be a Mr. Bohemia." Tina? Mr. Wally was quite curious. "Oh? It seems that my servant also participated in this game. So, besides Tina, who else is there? I think there must be my steward. He's always in the castle." Boss Luo said indifferently, "It seems that Mr. Wally here can't get the information from the outside. I'm curious, is Mr. Wally here also a servant?" "Of course." Mr. Wally smiled mysteriously. "Except for the servant identity, it is impossible for other identities to enter chessboard from the outside. Do you think I'm telling the truth or lying? It's stable. If this continues, it'll definitely be stable. Then I think only servants can enter chessboard." Boss Luo nodded. "Since Mr. Wally here is also a servant, let's duel." Boss Luo drew his sword directly. Mr. Wally's neat mustache couldn't help but twitch twice, and then he said indifferently, "Don't worry, it's rare for you to come to this temple. Don't you want to find out why I'm here, and why there is another me outside?" Boss Luo was surprised. "Mr. Wally, didn't you say that it's a secret? You don't want to say it. So, there is nothing to say, just do it." "Did I say that?" Mr. Wally was stunned at this time, and then he shook his head as if he didn't say that. "Damn, I really did say that. Just now. I did say that, but that's only because..." Instantly, Mr. Wally's face changed slightly. "Why did you do it?" He saw a huge arc of light coming straight at him. This was Holy Light Slash, the special skill of the Holy Light Sword. He knew that, and he used it himself. He used it to kill small monsters, and it was as easy as cutting grass. However, time didn't allow him to let his imagination run wild. Facing the powerful Holy Light Slash, Mr. Wally reacted quickly. He summoned the roots in the palace and blocked in front of him. At the same time, he even directly tore off a necklace hanging on his neck, and then a thick barrier of clear light appeared in front of him. The arc-shaped sword light instantly cut through the roots, and then slashed at the barrier. Under the fierce collision, the barrier was instantly shattered. Even the necklace on Mr. Varley's hand was directly shattered. How can the Holy Light Sword be so powerful? Mr. Wally looked at the broken necklace in his palm in disbelief. "My Rose Goddess Sai, what is your profession level of the Holy Light Knight?" "Now," Boss Luo paused and said, looking at the progress bar, "it should be almost level 99. Mr. Wally suddenly became pale. "How long have you been playing this game, level 99? You've been playing for 10 days? It should be about 6 hours outside," Boss Luo said, and another Holy Light Sword was released. This time, Mr. Wally was shocked and directly threw out a ring. This time, the ring was directly cut into pieces, but it also successfully offset the power of the Holy Light Sword. He screamed, "Impossible! It's only been 6 hours. How can your level increase to this level? Unless you have the Bounce Experience card, function card? It seems that Mr. Wally is really familiar with function cards. Boss Luo nodded. My master did draw this function card. It should be during the third round. What is that guy doing outside? Mr. Wally's permed hair was slightly messy at this moment, and his lips were trembling. Obviously, he was extremely angry. Am I the master of chessboard, or is he the master? What a rebellious chessboard! Without time to think, the third holy light sword was released again. In a hurry, Mr. Wally didn't throw anything this time, but he rolled on the ground very inelegantly to avoid it. The huge arc-shaped sword directly slashed on the wall of the inner hall at this time, cutting off the roots that clung to the wall, but unexpectedly, it didn't break the wall. On the wall, only a faint white mark was left. Luocio was a little surprised, but he still waved the holy light sword again. Wait a minute. Stop. Unexpectedly, Mr. Wally quickly got up and screamed, I'm not fighting anymore. Even if you kill me, it's useless. My identity here is not a servant. The sword of the great holy light had indeed stopped at this moment. Boss Luo put away the sword and smiled. Mr. Wally, are you going to share your secret with me now? Why do you say it's so elegant to share? Mr. Wally said with a fake smile, I'm indeed not a servant. There is a very special place in this game. Once a servant enters, no matter what he does, he will leave traces in the world of chessboard. If the same servant enters the game many times, he will be able to quickly become stronger through the inheritance obtained last time. Oh, I know this. Boss Luo nodded. Second round inheritance. Mr. Wally nodded. I'm the trace left behind. It's a legend. That's why I can win chessboard every time. So, Boss Luo thought for a while and said, every time you drive your followers to Roaring Forest, it's because you want to get the inheritance that can make them become stronger quickly? Almost. Mr. Wally nodded again and immediately said, but in fact, it's a necessary item to pass the level. But in fact, even if you kill me, this item won't be dropped. Boss Luo fell into deep thought. Seeing this, Mr. Wally slowly said, although you won't get any benefits from killing me, I can give you an item to give to me. However, I can give you the items that will allow you to successfully clear the game and bring out the items that you want. Boss Luo smiled and said, if I win, then wouldn't the people outside lose and be punished by the punishment roulette? Mr. Wally quickly said, this is very simple. As long as you team up with my servant outside, the problem will naturally be solved. How about it? This is a win-win situation. Not only will I avoid the punishment, but you can also take away the good things here. Even in the future, I can share this treasure with you. We can cooperate and get enough benefits from a chessboard. What's the item to pass the level? Boss Luo suddenly asked. Mr. Wally said, it's a plant. When it blossoms, it will release a special smell. Only this smell can make the gatekeeper fall into a depressed state. Without this special flower, there is no way to defeat the gatekeeper. And this flower can only be planted in this elf temple. So in order to ensure that you can pass the game later, you must always guard this flower. Boss Luo nodded and said, but as a vampire, you need to eat blood, so you need to constantly let the elves of the elf tribe send you sacrifices, food, right? Although I cannot suck blood for a long time, Mr. Wally said indifferently, I can't always suppress my nature. Besides, it's just a creature in the world of chessboard. It's not a big deal. Speaking of it, perhaps because of the environmental factors, the blood of these elves is not polluted at all. The purity is much higher than the high-quality crops in the clan farm. Also, they have their own belief in the gods. Speaking of which, I'm still a little reluctant to leave here. Boss Luo was still silent. Mr. Wally opened his hands and said, well, it's not something to think about. Smart people can easily get the answer. Perhaps you still don't know how many treasures this chessboard contains, Mr. Wally. Boss Luo suddenly interrupted him. Do you know the situation of Ms. Mayfair? Mayfair? Mr. Wally was stopped and looked at Mayfair subconsciously. At this moment, because of Boss Luo's holy light slash, Mayfair had already escaped, but she fell to the ground and was motionless as if she had fainted. You mean this female elf? Mr. Wally said carelessly. Isn't she just someone who was supposed to be my food, but she ran away and then came to me on her own accord? What's so special about her? If you like her, I'll give her to you. So you don't know about Ms. Mayfair? Boss Luo muttered. You don't even know about yourself. What do you mean by myself? Mr. Wally was stunned. Shortly after, he felt an intense pain that he had never felt before. A sharp blade had actually pierced through his back at this moment. It was at his heart. Mr. Wally looked down at the sharp blade that pierced through his chest in disbelief. He turned around. What he saw was Mayfair, who should have fainted on the ground. She was Ms. Elf. You're surprised, aren't you? I only closed my eyes. I didn't lose consciousness. The elf lady spoke with unprecedented anger. Die! You are a demon who toyed with my people and killed so many of them. Hhh. Mr. Wally touched the blood flowing out of his chest and felt the sharp pain caused by the sharp blade. He opened his mouth and his cheeks twitched a few times. Mayfair pulled out the sharp blade abruptly. Mr. Wally staggered forward 2 steps and then knelt on the ground. Then, he fell down. When he died, his eyes were still wide open as if he wanted to say something. Clank! The sharp blade fell from Mayfair's hand to the ground with a loud sound. She knelt on the ground absent-mindedly. I killed him! I killed him! I killed this demon! I killed him! Indeed, you killed him. Boss Luo checked Mr. Wally and found that he was indeed dead. Do you feel better? She raised her head subconsciously and then looked down at her trembling hands, saying blankly, I don't know. I don't know if I feel better or not. I'm just a little tired. Ms. Elf's body suddenly turned soft and then fell to the ground. On her abdomen there was a sharp broken root. The root had already pierced through her abdomen. I'm a little cold. Boss Luo walked to Mayfair's side, but her eyes gradually lost their luster, as if she couldn't see anything. I originally thought that everything would be fine after I killed him. Mayfair murmured, then I can leave with peace of mind. I can go to the outside world, to do so many things, to buy those delicious candies that you said are everywhere, really sweet, very sweet. I can remember their taste forever, no need to forget. I don't think I can wait any longer. Today, I can finally pass. It's so good. Are you still there? Are you still there? Why can't I see you? I'm still here. Luoqiu said softly. I'm beside you, looking at you. I see. Mayfair showed a slight smile on her face, and her absent-minded eyes gradually closed. Then, a large number of black patterns began to spread from her forehead and then bloomed. Then, shadow-like arms wrapped around her body. What happened? In the banquet hall of the castle, Ms. Gong Lina's voice suddenly sounded. Because she found that the circle of light on the roaring forest on the chessboard suddenly disappeared, and the servant cards of Ms. Maid's team suddenly disappeared and then reappeared. But the place where they appeared became the starting point when they originally entered the roaring forest. ########. Chapter 1801. Strange, how did we? Miss Maid suddenly made a puzzled voice. In addition to Dr. Gores and Sneeve, she also saw the temporary team leader, Boss Luo, but in fact they were separated in the thick fog of the trial a moment ago. However, the reality was that they inexplicably left the statue in front of the 3rd level and returned to the roaring forest. The time doesn't match. Why is it still daytime? Dr. Gores looked at the sky and frowned. The 3 of them looked at Luoqiu, who appeared in front of them again after being separated. Where's the female elf? Miss Mayfair is dead. Boss Luo said slowly. To be precise, Miss Mayfair is dead. She's dead? Sneeve frowned subconsciously. How could she be dead? We were still in the trial. She's dead? Then we came back here, which means. If we walk a little further, we'll probably know something, Boss Luo said after thinking for a while. Everyone's face slightly froze, and they didn't speak. They even felt a little strange. If their memories weren't messed up, except for the temporary team leader, the three of them should still be trapped in the third level of the trial. We did walk through this path. Dr. Gores thought at this moment and said, when we first met Mayfair, I have some impression of this tree. As he said, Dr. Gores quickly pushed aside some short shrubs that were as tall as a person and passed through. When everyone passed through one by one, they saw that Dr. Gores was already stunned in front of them. Soon, they understood why Dr. Gores was stunned. Mayfair, you and the adventure team met an injured mysterious woman in the forest. Do you choose to treat her? At the same time, everyone in the adventure team heard the prompt from the chessboard again, but it was up to the master to decide whether to help or not. At this moment, facing the female elf who was unconscious and lying on the trunk of the dead tree, everyone had different expressions. Did time really reset? Dr. Gores couldn't help muttering at this time. If so, our deduction in the second level of the maze was, you chose to treat her. Obviously, after the chessboard gave the message, the servant girl, as the master, quickly made a decision. The same choice as before. Dr. Gores had to treat Mayfair, who was injured by the arrow again, but because he found the usable medicinal materials nearby last time, the efficiency was much higher this time. They didn't say anything along the way. They were all doing the same thing, as well as strange things. Then, you successfully saved a life that was about to disappear. But the appearance of the injured person was too bizarre, so you decided to investigate carefully. After discussion, you thought that this woman might live in the forest, so you planned to look for her relatives in the forest. You decided to split up and leave one person to take care of the injured woman. Sure enough, it's the same, exactly the same. After hearing the familiar prompt again, Dr. Gores calmed down and looked at everyone, saying, the mission was reset, or it was reloaded. So, the place where we met Mayfair is the location of the save. How did Mayfair die? I need to know everything that happened after you were separated from us. I need to know every single detail. Boss Luo didn't hide anything and told them what happened in the temple before. But perhaps the news was too shocking. Dr. Gores and the others couldn't fully believe it. You mean, the person who controlled the temple is Mr. Varley? Dr. Gores was lost in thought. That's impossible. Mr. Varley has been outside all this time? Miss Tina shook her head. Varley is here. Varley is here? It was Mr. Sneeve. Boss Luo said indifferently, this is what I encountered before. Dr. Gores rubbed his eyebrows and said, it's not that we don't believe you, but it's too strange. You know, we can't contact our masters at present. Only you can know what happened outside. Tiff fainted. Chef Nelson was asked to prepare food. As for Mr. Sneeve's partner, Blackhound, he couldn't speak human language. That was to say, for Dr. Gores and the others, Boss Luo completely controlled their reception to the outside world. In fact, I can't contact my master now. Boss Luo shook his head and said, you can't use any of the methods given by the chessboard. They were silent again, and their eyes fell on Boss Luo. The original simple plot that they just needed to follow Boss Luo all the way seemed to be a little different from this moment on. They found that they couldn't simply believe what Boss Luo said. What should we do now? Mr. Sneeve suddenly looked at Dr. Gores and frowned, once. Whether we want to or not. Dr. Gores said in a deep voice, according to the chessboard, we can only do it once, right? Mayfair is dead, and everything is back to square one. It seems that what we need to do is to make sure that she doesn't die. Dr. Gores said and walked directly to Mayfair. He used the herbs in his hand to grind another kind of medicine and fed it to the elf lady. "What is this?" Boss Luo couldn't help but ask curiously. "A temporary medicine that can make people sleep soundly," Dr. Gores said indifferently. "I need to figure out under what circumstances her time will be reset, whether she can't survive today." "Doctor, are you planning to let her sleep until the end of the day?" The maid seemed to have understood what was going on. Dr. Gores nodded and immediately said, "Now, we need to find a place to survive today. Do you have any other suggestions?" Mr. Sneeve thought for a while and shook his head. Boss Luo said that they could give it a try. The game should be like this: after encountering a difficult problem, then start to think of a way to overcome it. If you play a game that can be defeated all the way, you will get bored of it, right? What happened? In the banquet hall of the castle, Ms. Gong Lina's voice suddenly sounded. Because she found that the circle of light on the roaring forest on the chessboard suddenly disappeared, and the servant cards of Ms. Maid's team suddenly disappeared and then reappeared. But the place where they reappeared became the starting point when they originally entered the roaring forest. At this time, it was Ms. Maid's turn to throw action points. She had actually thrown action points for several rounds, but because the team was caught in the mission and couldn't move, the points had been saved. But this time, when Miss Maid was about to pick up the dice moved away, skipped her, and went to the next master butler who was going to throw his action points. "Did I encounter a punishment that forbids action?" Ms. Maid looked at Mr. Varley at this time. Mr. Varley smiled faintly at this time. "There is such a situation, but it rarely happens. Generally, it only appears in a particularly important or very special mission environment, then it will be forbidden to throw action points." Ms. Maid chuckled and said, "In this way, it seems that I will lose a lot of points." Mr. Varley said casually, "It's worth it no matter how many action points you use to exchange for such an opportunity. Prohibiting action points means that the final profit of this special mission will definitely be able to make up for the losses you have incurred in these rounds of actions. It will definitely be worth the ticket price. I'm so envious." "That is after the mission can be completed," Ms. Maid said indifferently. "If it can't be completed, it means that you can only watch and can't do anything. But the life reduction will continue, right? High risk, high reward." Mr. Varley waved his hand, then took the dice from the butler who had just finished throwing. "I said, it is worth it no matter how many action points are used." "Oh, it's 5 points again." Due to the previous use of the function card to jump directly to the roaring forest. This time the 5 action points were enough for Mr. Varley's servant to go deeper into the roaring forest. But this time, Mr. Varley did not direct his servant to intercept Boss Luo like before. Instead, he let Cade Riley approach the butler's servant, Nan Xiaonan. Each round of action points ended with Mr. Varley. Then it was a new round of life reduction points. At this time, the dice were handed to Ms. Gong Lina. At this time, Tang Tianlin, the only servant who did not move in the roaring forest, was currently near the center of the chessboard. The mark there was King City. Mr. Nelson seems to have been out for a while. Ms. Maid put on new gloves at this time, picked up the dice, and threw the life reduction points. Next to her, there was already a pile of discarded white gloves. Ms. Simasai didn't even have the urge to roll her eyes. High-end food often needs to be cooked patiently. Mr. Varley smiled and said, "I believe Mr. Nelson will definitely serve us an unforgettable meal." Having said that, the butler looked at the ghoul bodyguards waiting on the side. The 2 ghoul bodyguards immediately understood and stood up. "Let's go to the kitchen." Mr. Varley looked straight at all the movements of the chessboard, and waved his hand without looking back, indicating that he agreed. Mr. Varley, who looked as calm as an old dog, felt a strong sense of anxiety at this time. Did they find the inside of the temple? But it didn't matter, they should not find a way to clear the level. At this time, Mr. Varley suddenly said, "Lisa, team up with me later." "Yes, sir." The butler of the castle bowed at this time, but the butler was puzzled at this time. He found that his servant didn't seem to listen to him. Well, did I just ask her to go in this direction? Next to the bonfire, time passed little by little. This was an ordinary cave in the roaring forest. They didn't follow the instructions of the chessboard to explore the surroundings separately. Instead, they directly moved Mayfair, who was unconscious after being fed the medicine, and began to wait. Dr. Gores calculated the time at this time, looked at everyone and said, "It should be midnight soon. Today will be over soon. The situation of this elf lady will probably be clearer." Mr. Gores seems to be quite familiar with the herbs here. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time, "The herbs collected from the forest can make Miss Mayfair sleep until now." Dr. Gores said casually, "Mr. Varley used to bring out a lot of plants from the chessboard. Most of them were given to me for research." "That's also very good." Boss Luo smiled. Ms. Gores said with a trace of pride, "You may not know, but Dr. Gores is actually a very good secret pharmacist, with the title of Ghost Medicines Gores." "That's really good." Boss Luo nodded. Dr. Gores waved his hand and said, "It's nothing. The secret pharmacist is just a part-time job for fun. My main profession is still a doctor. However, as everyone knows, a doctor needs to know how to use medicine. I just learned a little more about pharmacology. My title and whatnot were all spread by outsiders. I didn't take it seriously. It's not easy. Finally, I can pretend in front of this guy." Boss Luo smiled and said, "By the way, you were still in the third level of the trial. Did anything special happen in the third level?" Dr. Gores's expression changed slightly. Not only him, but Mr. Sneeve and Tina's expressions also became a little unnatural at this time. "She changed," Mr. Sneeve suddenly said at this time. They all looked over and saw that a strange black pattern had suddenly appeared on Mayfair's forehead. The pattern began to spread all over her body, and after it bloomed, it actually grew many shadow arms. It was the first time for the doctors and others to see this strange scene. They were all surprised and opened their mouths slightly. In this way, they watched Mayfair being wrapped by these shadow arms and then sinking into the darkness bit by bit. Everything in front of them suddenly spun and disappeared. When their vision recovered, they saw that the mottled sunlight had become dim after filtering through layers of leaves and falling on the soil full of rotten leaves. They returned to the original place again. "Everyone." Dr. Gores took a deep breath at this time and said seriously, "It seems that we are really trapped in this time loop. ######PS. As usual. Chapter 1802. They had already verified that if they didn't do anything, they would just let Mayfair sleep until a day's time was up, and it would return to the original time again. Although it was difficult to accept, they had to be clear about one thing. If they couldn't solve this kind of reincarnation, they were likely to be trapped in this period of time. So, the next step is the second verification. Dr. Gores looked at Mayfair, who was also unconscious after being injured by an arrow, and said indifferently, "Let's see if once she dies, time will go back again." Boss Luo suddenly said at this time, "Mr. Gores, are you going to directly end Miss Mayfair's life?" Dr. Gores shrugged and said, "It's just an experiment. If time goes back, she didn't die at all. If time doesn't go back, it means that we have broken this curse. This may not be able to get the reward behind this event, but it's better than being trapped in this period of time. Why, you can't bear to kill her. She's just a creature in the game. It has nothing to do with us." Luocio looked at Sneeve and Miss Tina. He found that the two had no intention of opposing at this time. Obviously, they acquiesced to Dr. Gores's statement. However, Boss Luo said, "I have already said that the time of her previous death has been reversed. There is no need to test it again." "That's just what you said." Dr. Gores shook his head and said, "Some theories need to be verified by yourself. You don't have to do it, I can do it. It's very simple. Just cut her neck and you can get the result." Luochu shook his head at this time. I don't agree. Dr. Gores opened his mouth in surprise. He knew that the temporary captain was the strongest in the team, and he was so strong that he could defeat Mr. Varley's servant. He didn't want to have a bad relationship with him. Masters could form a team, and masters could also disband the team. There was no rule that said that servants who had formed a team could not fight each other. This was a rule that wasn't clearly stated, and one had to figure it out on their own. Perhaps it was because this was the first time the other party had played this game, and because of his empiricism, he subconsciously thought that after forming a party, they would be a community, and did not think in this direction. Or perhaps he had already thought of this point? But if you end up like this, how am I supposed to get out of this? Then let's not kill him. Mr. Sneeve said indifferently, if killing her can remove the curse, then this incident is meaningless. Now that we know that even if we don't do anything, once today is over, time will immediately reverse. In other words, we have to find a solution before the end of today. So, let's follow Chessboard's instructions and explore the forest separately. Maybe there's a plot that we haven't encountered yet. Old Sneeve, do you have a new idea? Dr. Gores saw that there was a way out, so he naturally took it. A little. Mr. Sneeve nodded and said, you see, the first time I entered Roaring Forest, I directly brought Mayfair back to the tribe and handed her to her people. Previously, we avoided her clansmen and sneaked into the tribe. We also found out about the time reversal. Clearly, different methods and choices in this matter can lead us to different information. Why don't we know that Mayfair has been reversing time? That's because we know too little about this incident. So, what we have to do now is to collect as much information as possible. Dr. Gores thought for a while and said, that is to say, we have to carry out a variety of operations. This is a huge project. I hope we won't become crazy again and again. However, since there is a change, let's make some adjustments. Dr. Gores looked at everyone at this time. At the beginning, I took care of Mayfair, and then you explored. This time, let someone else stay and take care of her, and then I'll explore. How about it? I like this kind of problem-solving atmosphere. Boss Luo smiled slightly at this time. Dr. Gores shook his head. Does this guy really treat this as a game to clear the level? The essence of this game is not to play, but to find a way to clear the level and then leave with the things here. Then take care of her one by one. Dr. Gores said indifferently, I'll go explore first, you three decide who will take care of her. With that, Dr. Gores picked up a branch, then threw it, and then walked directly in the direction indicated by the branch. Mr. Sneeve didn't speak at this time, but he seemed to have made a decision and left directly. Only the maid Tina and Boss Luo were left. Tina thought at this time and said, Mr. Luo, if you don't mind, can you take care of her this time? It doesn't matter. Luochu smiled slightly. I can also take a break. Tina nodded simply, and immediately went in a direction. Perhaps it was a coincidence. The direction this maid left was also the direction she chose for the first time. Their footsteps couldn't be heard. Obviously they were far away from the place where Mayfair was found. In fact, the wound on her body had been treated by Dr. Gores. At this time, Boss Luo made a big fireball, and after making a bonfire, he sat next to Mayfair. After a while, perhaps out of curiosity, Boss Luo touched Mayfair's forehead with his finger. This was the place where the black pattern grew. What do you not dare to face, Miss Mayfair? Boss Luo whispered. Her lips suddenly opened slightly. This time, because Dr. Gores didn't give her the sleeping potion, she obviously wouldn't sleep until the end of the day, but it seemed that she woke up earlier than the first time. The elf lady really woke up. The moment she woke up, the elf lady suddenly jumped up, and then reached for her waist. She was used to keeping her weapon here, but this time, she found that she touched nothing. Are you looking for this thing? Boss Luo picked up a weapon. I thought you might not sleep well with it, so I took it off. At this time, Mayfair sneered and said, If you are afraid that I will sweat while sleeping, will you also take off my clothes? Boss Luo was startled and thought for a while. I think I would just move you to a shady place. Mayfair snorted and then moved, but she touched the wound on her back. She couldn't help but frown in pain. Did you save me and treat my wound? Not me, it was one of my temporary companions. There's someone else. Mayfair frowned again, then looked around nervously, and then quickly asked, What time is it now? How long have I been unconscious? It's been about 2 hours since we found you. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, As for how long you have been unconscious before this, I don't know. It shouldn't be over yet today. Mayfair lowered her head and thought for a while, then she gritted her teeth and stood up while enduring the pain. Thank you and your companions for saving me. Please thank them on behalf of me. But I have to leave here now. Please give me back my weapon. But you're wound? It's fine. Her face was pale, but the elf lady's face was full of determination, and even had a sense of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away. Boss Luo blinked, and a candy appeared in his palm. You're injured. Do you want to eat something to replenish your sugar? Looking at the candy wrapped in a delicate sugar coating, Mayfair was startled at first, then frowned, and directly swatted away Boss Luo's hand, and the candy naturally fell to the ground. I don't like to eat sweets, Mayfair said coldly. You're an adventurer who came into the forest from the outside, right? I advise you not to have any ideas about me. Because I hate humans. If it weren't for the fact that you saved me, maybe I would have already killed you. Saying this, Mayfair directly put on her weapon, and then said with a warning look, You'd better not follow me, and pretend that you never saw me. Mayfair stared at Luocho all the way, and after walking a few meters away, she turned around and directly jumped into the forest, and her back was soon out of sight. Boss Luo looked at the candy on the ground and said to himself, It seems that it's not the same one. At this moment Sneeve, Dr. Gores and even Tina. None of them came back. At this moment, a small light suddenly floated from the forest, and quickly came to Boss Luo's side. It floated up and down, as if it was joyful, and also seemed to be telling something. You found me again. Boss Luo smiled slightly. He was moving quickly in the dense forest, and his eyes were full of eagerness, even sweating, Mr. Sneeve. He seemed to be looking for something. In fact, he had been walking back and forth in this area for a long time. Why is there nothing? He didn't know how many times Mr. Snaff stopped under a big tree. The first guard had a sword wound left by Gerald, and the second maze also had a mark left by him. Mr. Sneeve muttered at this time, This is the place where you were killed by Wally's servant. Didn't you leave anything, Bang? Mr. Sneeve suddenly punched the big tree, and the leaves shook. He couldn't help but recall the question he heard in front of the statue in the 3rd level of the Road of Trials. No, I didn't. He roared and pounded the tree trunk in front of him crazily until his fists were badly mangled. Panting, he held onto the tree trunk and stopped. I didn't. He powerlessly slid to the ground, and his eyes gradually lost focus. He only felt as if there was a pulling force that kept pulling him down into the abyss. Suddenly, he stopped. Light and shadow around him changed, and then Ma Long fell asleep. He was actually in the middle of a bustling market. This is, Mr. Snaff looked at the bustling streets in disbelief. This was the town that he had stayed in for a few decades ago, the day before he and his companions from the demon hunting squad set off for the ancient castle. Mr. Sneeve suddenly shuddered. He instantly knocked away the pedestrians on the road, and hurriedly ran on the street. Soon, he had already arrived in front of a hotel. He recklessly opened the door of the hotel directly. Such a rude behavior unexpectedly didn't attract the attention of the people in the hotel lobby. Finally, he ran to the upstairs of the hotel. Mr. Sneeve panicked in the corridor. Finally, he saw a mature and beautiful intellectual woman, who was carrying a basket with clothes, slowly walking down the stairs. Lenny, the moment Mr. Sneeve saw the woman, his eyes couldn't help but brighten, and he even instinctively rushed to the woman, wanting to hug her. However, at the moment of hugging, he didn't feel anything. The woman wore a smile on her face, and directly passed through his body. Mr. Sneeve rushed into the air. He quickly turned back, and saw the woman carrying the basket walking to the room in front of him, and his face couldn't help but slightly change. "No, Lenny. No, don't knock on the door. Don't enter this room. Don't open the door. Please don't open the door. I beg you." At this moment, Mr. Sneeve actually screamed at the top of his lungs, and even hurriedly rushed to the woman carrying the basket, but this time, he passed through her body. He couldn't make any contact with her at all. "Sneeve, I've helped you take the clothes and also sewed your. What are you doing? Sneeve. This is mine. You actually disgusting." "No, I'm not. The moment the woman opened the door, Mr. Sneeve, who was lying on the ground, suddenly turned pale. His lips couldn't help but tremble, and his mind was blank, looking at everything in the room in a daze. In the room, he saw a young guy, who was now looking at the door with a frightened face. He was holding a woman's underwear in one hand, and his other hand had already reached into his trousers. Rush! Ah! Mr. Sneeve at this time shouted angrily, and desperately rushed into the door. "How can you be so ugly? How can you? How can you?" Ferocious, remorseful, and even vicious, these flashed across the old Sneeve's face for a moment. He wanted to strangle the young man who was sitting on the bed blankly with his own hands. But in the end, he found that he was just strangling the trunk of a big tree. This was still the roaring forest, a place close to the forbidden area. For a moment, he powerlessly sat on the ground, holding his head in pain, and forcefully hit the trunk in front of him. His head was broken and bleeding. How could I have forgotten that? I used to have such an ugly side to me? ######## PS 73/84. Chapter 1803. In front of the entrance to the cave leading to the elf tribe. A few male elves from the elf tribe walked out quickly. After whispering something, they began to disperse and leave. After they left, a hidden figure quickly walked out and entered the cave. Dr. Gores. He quickly came to the wall that could only be opened with the special power of the elf tribe. Sneeve said that even if he secretly learned the words that Mayfair carved on the wall, without the power of the elf tribe, he still couldn't open the passage to the elf tribe. But Dr. Gores didn't think so. He said that since he was already trapped in today, he should try any method. At this time, Dr. Gores used his finger to draw on the wall. Relying on his memory, he began to carve the words written by Mayfair. However, he did not carve it so simply. Before carving, he put his finger into a small bottle and dipped it into a blood-red liquid, fresh blood. This was Mayfair's blood. As a doctor, when he removed the arrow from Mayfair's body, he had enough time and opportunity to get some of the elf lady's blood. As a vampire, Dr. Gores knew very well that most of the power of non-human creatures came from their blood. Blood was generally believed to contain unknown power. At this time, the finger that was stained with the elf lady's blood slowly drew a complicated symbol on the wall. In fact, he had only seen Mayfair draw it once, but he had already memorized it. His memory was actually very good, as he said. In the secret medicine course, there were tens of thousands of characteristics and uses of materials. As a secret medicine master, the first thing to train was his memory. Only then could he quickly find what he needed among the complicated materials. Suddenly, a faint light appeared on the wall. Dr. Gores narrowed his eyes and chuckled. "It's really effective." When the passage opened, Dr. Gores stepped into the passage without hesitation and came to the special space where the elf tribe was located. What greeted his eyes was still the quiet forest composed of sleeping trees. As a matter of fact, if he wanted to prove that the temporary captain wasn't lying, all he needed to do was to go to the temple and take a look at the real Mr. Wally. Dr. Gores quickly bypassed the quiet forest and headed towards the hill where the temple was located. As for this time, he did not plan to walk the trial path again. Previously, Mayfair had taken the trial path because he didn't want to have a direct confrontation with the temple's guards. Secondly, Sneeve had said that it would be relatively easy for him to pass the trial path, so he had agreed. But he hadn't expected that so many things would happen on the trial path. This time, without the troublesome elf Mayfair and Sneeve, Dr. Gores naturally had nothing to worry about. Would he have a conflict with the temple guards on the way? He didn't know if killing the temple guards here would give him a lot of experience points. However, in any case, it was always more convenient for him to act alone. Thinking of this, Dr. Gores suddenly felt a sense of relief. "Mr. Gores, you are here too." Then, the doctor subconsciously shook his head, thinking that he might be too tired to actually have auditory hallucinations here. Bah, this was clearly the quiet forest, so quiet that even the sound of falling leaves could be heard. "Why are you here?" Dr. Girls turned around and looked as if he had seen a ghost. He frowned and said, "Shouldn't you be taking care of Mayfair?" Yes, at this time, Dr. Gores, who was quietly planning to do something bad, saw the temporary captain of the servant team, Boss Luo. "I saw that everyone hasn't come back for a long time, so I came out to look for you." "Of course not." Dr. Gores quickly calmed down and said calmly, "Oh, really? So it has been so long? Looks like I've been waiting for quite some time. What I mean is, in order to ensure that I would definitely be able to enter this place, I waited outside for quite some time. I waited for the elves who came out to search for Mayfair to leave before I entered. This also ensures that when I come in, I won't meet them head-on." "Mr. Gores is very thoughtful." Boss Luo nodded. "I didn't think about this problem at first. I thought that Dr. Gores might be doing something bad." "How can that be?" Dr. Gores shook his head and said, "What bad things can I do? Now we are in the same boat, even if I want to do something, it is for our team." "What is Mr. Gores going to do now?" Boss Luo asked with a smile. Dr. Gores responded quickly, and he didn't think about it. "Previously, we brought Mayfair into the horde. This time, I want to try and see if there will be any new changes if we don't bring Mayfair in." "I see." Boss Luo nodded. "This is a good idea. Then let's move together, Mr. Gores." "Okay." Dr. Gores nodded slightly. He realized that in this situation, it seemed that he had no other choice but to nod and agree. Since the sudden appearance of this temporary team leader caught him off guard, the conversation had been led by him. Until now, he had no choice but to move together. Dr. Gores sighed and finally had a chance to say, "If you leave, then who will take care of Mayfair now? No, if I calculate the time, she should have woken up, right?" Boss Luo was walking in front. Hearing this, he turned back and said casually, "Miss Mayfair woke up and left." "Oh, woke up? What, left?" Dr. Gores rushed forward subconsciously. "Why did she leave? You didn't stop her." "Just like what Mr. Gores said, we should try every possibility." Boss Luo said slowly, "So I think, let Miss Mayfair leave by herself, and see if there will be any new discoveries. Is there anything wrong?" No. Dr. Gores had to shake his head. If he denied it, it meant that he denied the logic of coming here quietly, which meant that he refuted his own words. "Then let's go." Boss Luo smiled and said, "I think, this time, we won't take the trial road, but the main road. It should be this way." Boss Luo still walked in front and led the way. Dr. Girth narrowed his eyes at this moment. His palm subconsciously touched his dagger. At this distance, Zhang Tai's dagger was already in his hand. But he quickly gave up this idea. "This guy's armor is an all-around defense without any gaps. I heard that after Mr. Wally's servant failed, he used his only card, Resurrection of the Dead. I wonder if Mr. Wally has found a way to deal with this set of armor after he leveled up his account? Fortunately, Mr. Gores is your teammate," Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. Dr. Gores couldn't help but be startled, and asked subconsciously, "Why?" Boss Luo smiled and said, "Because Mr. Gores is not only smart, but also quite reliable. You see, if it weren't for you, we probably wouldn't have been able to save Miss Mayfair. Moreover, if it were someone else, I may be worried about one thing." "What is it?" Boss Luo turned back and said, "You may be worried about being stabbed in the back. But, if it's Mr. Gores, it won't happen, right?" "Of course." Dr. Gores shrugged at this time and smiled. "If I don't hold on to such a strong captain like you, I'm really stupid." The doctor's back was already cold at this time. These words were sharper than a straightforward sword. The doctor couldn't help but think of a sentence, hidden killing intent. They were silent all the way. The road to the temple was unimpeded all the way. They didn't see any guards until they had climbed the hill. At the entrance of the temple, they saw 4 elf guards. "Do we directly kill them, or find a chance to sneak in?" Dr. Gores asked directly at this time. Boss Luo said, "It should be this time whether to directly kill them or find a chance to sneak in." Dr. Gores shook his head and said, "Then sneak in. Sneak in and ask for more information. I have the skill to sneak in, what about you?" Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "I seem to have gotten an invisibility scroll on the way." With that, Boss Luo directly disappeared in front of Dr. Gores. But the doctor could still hear his voice. "How is it? Is there any flaw?" "No." Dr. Gores sighed and said with a bitter smile, "Not at all." "Then, I'll go inside and wait for you, Mr. Gores." Dr. Gores only heard some faint footsteps at this time. Then, he couldn't hear anything. He saw that the 4 guards at the entrance of the temple didn't respond at this time. He didn't know whether this temporary captain had successfully entered the temple. Oh, invisibility scroll. I've played this game so many times, but I've never seen it before. Dr. Gores sighed. He didn't know if there was something wrong with chessboard. That gave a green light to a servant who entered the game for the first time. Dr. Gores quickly collected his chaotic thoughts and directly activated the skill, flashing past the guards. The guards only felt a gust of wind blowing past them, and then they couldn't feel anything else. After entering the temple, Dr. Gores' skill began to cool down, and he appeared again. He looked around vigilantly, but there was no one around. He couldn't help but ask tentatively, "Are you here?" "I'm here, on your left, Mr. Gores." Dr. Gores' heart suddenly contracted. He calmed down and nodded again. "Mr. Gores, you can go. I'll follow you. This scroll seems to be a one-time use, so I plan to keep it up. It's a bit exciting to think about it. If Mr. Gores encounters an enemy or is in danger, and I suddenly appear, I'll definitely scare the enemy. Maybe I can even turn the situation around. I'm now one of your trump cards, Mr. Gores. I don't know if the enemy will be scared or not, but I'm almost scared to death now, okay?" He just wanted to kill him and planned to stab him in the back. Not long after, he could only let this guy follow him in stealth mode. Dr. Gores, who was a little scared, couldn't help but move forward cautiously. However, most of the attention was actually on him, which made him feel very uneasy. "Who is it?" At this moment, a figure flashed past. The newcomer was holding an exquisite sword, and his equipment was obviously better than the guards of the temple. Dr. Gores frowned subconsciously. He didn't expect to be exposed so soon after entering the temple. His reaction was also very fast. He took out the dagger in his hand and attacked first. However, the male elf with the exquisite sword was not afraid of Dr. Gores' sudden attack. He waved the sword in his hand casually and easily blocked the attack. He even had time to say, "The angle is good. Are you proficient in assassination?" "It's not over yet." Dr. Gores sneered at this moment. The dagger in his hand spun in an instant. He took advantage of the momentum and directly slashed at the male elf's neck. Unexpectedly, the other elf was faster than him. He leaned back and then hit Dr. Gores' abdomen with his knee. However, Dr. Gore's reaction was also fast. He dodged and then quickly widened the distance between them. In a short fight, he already knew that the opponent was a skilled swordsman who was very difficult to deal with. Dr. Gore's didn't plan to be entangled with the opponent here. Coincidentally, the cooldown time of the stealth ability was over, so he directly activated the ability and planned to escape. You trespassed the temple. Do you think you can leave just like that? Stay. The male elf snorted coldly at this moment. Then, he bent down and put the sword back into the scabbard. Then, he made a sword drawing action. Drawing the sword. It was as fast as lightning. While Dr. Girls was sneaking, he only felt a huge sense of crisis coming from his body. When he reacted, he felt that his lower back had suffered an unprecedented injury. His whole body was slammed against the wall, and his body sank into it. He felt as if all the bones in his body were broken. Suddenly, he was grabbed by the back of his neck and pulled out from the wall. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his shoulders again. It turned out that the male elf quickly pierced through Dr. Gore's left and right shoulders with his sword, directly abolishing his combat ability. Almost at the same time. What happened? Several elf guards who were patrolling hurried over. After seeing the male elf, they quickly said respectfully, "Captain Malik." "Nothing, I just caught a guy who broke into the temple." The male elf who was holding an exquisite sword. Captain Malik said indifferently, "I have already knocked him down. There's nothing else. You can continue patrolling. I will deal with this person." The elf guards didn't have any doubts. They nodded and left together. At this time, Captain Malik looked at Dr. Gores, who had lost the ability to resist, and said, "Although I am not very clear about your origin, it just so happens that it's you." At this time, the doctor was paralyzed on the ground, like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He looked at the male elf who was looking down at him. In addition to the shock on his face, there was more doubt. He said that he would always be by my side, that he would hide his trump card, that he would secretly take action and then turn the tables. Where is he? Where did he go? Liar. F***CK. 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 Chapter 1804. Captain Malik tied Dr. Gores up and left immediately after making sure that he couldn't struggle. Dr. Gores could vaguely hear Captain Malik's voice. He was commanding some guards who were patrolling nearby. "I know you're here. Don't pretend to be dead," the doctor said in a low voice. "Yes, I'm here." Dr. Gores gritted his teeth and said, "Why didn't you help when Malik attacked me? Did you forget what you said before?" "Mr. Gores, don't you think it's a good opportunity now?" "What opportunity?" Dr. Gores couldn't help but frown. "You see, the purpose of entering the temple is to meet Mr. Varley again. Mr. Gores, didn't you come here with this question? I think you'll be able to solve the question in your heart soon." "You mean, let Malik send me to the inner temple?" Dr. Gores couldn't help but frown. The path to the inner temple shouldn't be blocked. "With my advanced skill and your invisibility scroll, we can sneak in. Why do we have to use this method? Didn't you see that my arms were crippled?" "Because, Mr. Gores, you've already met Captain Malik." The doctor was speechless at this time. He was silent for a moment and said angrily, "But you shouldn't just stand by and watch. Are you so sure that he won't kill me directly?" "It's okay." Boss Luo's voice sounded in Dr. Gore's ears. "I'll watch over you. Mr. Gores, don't worry. If it's a matter of life and death, I won't let you face it alone. We're a team now. We'll help each other in the same boat. Remember what you said." Dr. Gores snorted. "I'll trust you one more time." At this time, Captain Malik came back again. Without saying anything, he directly lifted Dr. Gores and walked all the way into the depths of the temple. At this time, Dr. Gores finally understood what Captain Malik had done before he left. Obviously, he was going to command the temple guards so that no one would notice him when he carried a person into the depths of the temple. "Where do you want to take me?" Dr. Gores asked in a deep voice. However, Captain Malik didn't respond. He didn't even look at him. Dr. Gores couldn't help but frown. Aren't you curious as to why I sneaked into your temple? Captain Malik said slowly. My duty is to protect this temple. No matter who comes, no matter what they come for, it is the same. Dr. Gores was stunned. Could this guy be so stubborn? He rolled his eyes and suddenly said, Mayfair asked me to come. Hearing this, Captain Malik stopped and finally lowered his head to look at Dr. Gores, who was being dragged by him. Why did she ask you to come? Dr. Gores said, she said that she left a very important thing in the temple, so she asked me to help her find it. After it's done, she will marry me. Captain Malik said expressionlessly, Then did you find it? Dr. Gores continued, I was about to find it, but I didn't expect to meet you, hero. How about we make a deal? You let me go, and I will tell you where the thing is. Then you can take it back to Mayfair. According to the agreement, she will marry you. Look at that girl's figure, isn't it? Don't you feel a little excited just thinking about it? I can also help you play the piano outside the room. She did leave something here. Captain Malik shook his head. But it's not what you said. I didn't say what it was. How do you know I didn't say it? Dr. Gores shook his head. You are not her. How do you know? It's very simple. She is here. Captain Malik carried the doctor at this time, opened a door at the side and walked in. Mayfair. This elf lady was in this room at this time, sitting in front of a desk, reading a book. Mayfair saw someone open the door and come in and showed a surprised expression. Captain Malik? Why are you? Who is this person? What the hell? Dr. Gores opened his mouth. The female elf in front of him was actually Mayfair? Dr. Gores was quite confused at this time. He was full of doubts and could only silently listen to the conversation between Captain Malik and Mayfair, who appeared in this room. This is an outsider who broke into the temple. He may be an adventurer who came from outside the forest. He said he was called by you. I don't know this guy. Mayfair in the room frowned and said, I have never seen him before. Captain Malik, what's going on? Apart from us, no one should be able to open the barrier of the tribe. Besides, it's a human. I used your blood? What? Dr. Gores looked at Mayfair in this room in surprise. He could easily see that Mayfair's eyes at this time had a deep prejudice, and even disgust. It was not disgust at him, but it seemed to be disgust at the identity of a human or an outsider. You didn't go out today? Captain Malik suddenly asked. Mayfair shook her head and said indifferently, Today is my rest day. Captain, have you forgotten? After waking up in the morning, I haven't left the room. But if you want to find someone to prove it, I really can't find anyone. But I can kill this intruder with my own hands to prove myself. That's not necessary. Captain Malik said indifferently, It seems that this guy is just making things up to confuse us. I will deal with him properly. You have a good rest in the room. Vice Captain Mayfair. Mayfair at this time instantly stood at attention and responded loudly, Yes, sir. Wait, she is the vice-captain? Dr. Gores couldn't help but exclaim at this time. Captain Malik said indifferently, What, you don't even know this? It seems that the next time you make up a story you need to know more. Dr. Gores suddenly frowned and didn't say anything. He saw Mayfair's eyes at this time. Besides disgust, there was also doubt. Could it be that the one who was injured by the arrow in the forest was not the same as the Mayfair here? Sisters? Because in the castle, there were twin sisters Tina and Tiff, who were separated as conjoined twins. It wasn't difficult for Dr. Gores to accept this conjecture. Do you have any sisters? Dr. Gores quickly asked before he was taken away by Captain Malik. At the moment when the door was closed, he heard Mayfair's indifferent reply, No. You shameful intruder, do you still want to slander me? The door was closed. Captain Malik took Dr. Gores away without saying a word. At this time, the originally closed door suddenly opened a little. A pair of green eyes kept peeping. Until Captain Malik disappeared at the end of the corridor, only then did she leave. In the room, Mayfair was leaning against the back of the door at this time, as if thinking about something. All of a sudden, Mayfair reached out with his hand to cover his shoulder, his back. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as a look of pain appeared on his face. Miss Elf's face also seemed to be a little pale at this time. After a while, the door of Vice Captain Mayfair's room quietly opened again, and then an agile figure came out of the door and quickly disappeared in the corridor. At this time, the door of the room slowly closed. It should have been closed if there was no accident. But at this time, the door strangely stopped, and then it was pushed open by something invisible, and opened again, and then closed. In the room, there was still no one. But after a while, the books on the desk suddenly floated up and then flipped. Then the drawers were opened one by one, but if it was locked, it was still locked. There was not much furniture in the room. There was some movement in the wardrobe at this time, as if someone had walked past, but it was not opened. Finally, behind a screen, there was a basin used to wash one's face. At this moment, there were still a few bloody strips of cloth hanging on it. Suddenly, the door of the room opened again and then closed. At this time, there was still no one in the corridor. Finally, Captain Malik stopped again, in front of a huge door. This was probably the inner hall of the temple, where the god worshipped here was. Dr. Gores could not help but feel a little nervous at this time. Even if he was in good condition, he would still be nervous, not to mention that his hands were broken, and he was carried in like a lamb. At this time, the closed door slowly opened at this time. Like a devout guard, Captain Malik lowered his head and respectfully walked into the inner hall. Dr. Gores began to look at the environment here. There were almost no discrepancies between what Boss Luo told him after backtracking time. Dr. Gores saw a woman with her eyes covered and sitting on the throne. But her feet were connected to the floor like the roots of a plant. But at this time, Dr. Gores did not see the so-called Mr. Varley. Captain Malik directly threw Dr. Gores to the ground at this time. He kept his head down and did not look at the blindfolded woman on the throne. "I've brought the food you want." At the same time, a low voice sounded in this empty and strange inner hall. Almost at the same time, Dr. Gores' eyes suddenly shrank. This was indeed Mr. Varley's voice. "He's not an elf from the tribe." The low voice sounded. Captain Malik said unhurriedly, "This is an outsider who was caught sneaking into the temple today. He should be a human adventurer from outside the forest." As soon as Captain Malik finished speaking, a root not far from him suddenly rose and then whipped Captain Malik's body fiercely. With his strength, he could not avoid it. The whipping sound was so loud that even Dr. Gores felt pain at this time. But Captain Malik did not say a word at this time and silently endured it. "I need an elf. Malik, don't try to provoke me, bring an elf back for me." "I know." Captain Malik answered expressionlessly, then lowered his head and got up. He turned around and walked out of the inner hall without looking at Dr. Gores. The door closed, leaving Dr. Gores on the floor of the inner hall with a blank face. The doctor looked around blankly at this time and saw the dense roots on the wall above the woman on the throne suddenly opened. "Mr. Varley." Dr. Gores stared at the man who appeared at the place where the roots opened. Finally, the man was supported by a few roots and slowly landed. He then calmly walked to Dr. Gores. "You just called my name? Mr. Varley, it's really you." Dr. Gores said with a hint of joy on his face, "What that guy said is true. The person in this temple is really you." "That guy?" Mr. Varley looked at Dr. Gores at this time. "Who is that guy?" "Servant, I'm the leader of the servants in this game." Dr. Gores said subconsciously, "We are now in a time." Dr. Gores suddenly stopped at this time and looked at Mr. Varley in surprise. "It shouldn't be like this. If this is the Mr. Varley he knew, he shouldn't have such a reaction when he saw me. It's like seeing a stranger." In addition, according to Luacio's experience with Mayfair in the inner hall, This, Mr. Varley, was also a member trapped in today. If Mr. Varley had been killed before and Mayfair went back in time, then Mr. Varley appeared here again at this time was already the best proof. Time has been going back to today. Then, in the trial road, what's the matter with the mark left by Sneeve's servant? Why don't you continue? Mr. Varley smiled slightly at this time. I also want to know about the chess game outside. The chess game outside. Dr. Gores was startled and said subconsciously, Mr. Varley, how long have you been here? Not long. Mr. Varley said quite casually, it should be more than a month since I defeated the Grand Duke of the family. Grand Duke of the family, more than a month. Dr. Gores took a deep breath at this time. Mr. Varley defeated the Grand Duke of the family in the chessboard, and then he was angered and driven out of the territory of the clan in the inhuman territory. That was a long time ago. At that time, he hadn't even been recruited yet. He was still in the inhuman territory black market, doing some work for people with physical defects. This Mr. Varley? ############################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################################### Chapter 1805. The light in the hallway of the castle came from the candlesticks in the hands of the two ghoul bodyguards. According to Lisa's instructions, they were heading to the kitchen to see how Chef Nelson was preparing the food. The game this time seems to be a lot longer than the previous ones. Mr. Varley must be very happy. His favorite game is chessboard. It's a pity that his opponents can't last more than 3 hours. They chatted casually. Unknowingly, the two ghoul bodyguards arrived at the castle's kitchen. The door was ajar and a trace of light came out from inside. However, the two ghoul bodyguards didn't hear any sound coming from the kitchen. "Mr. Nelson, are you here? We are here to see if the food is ready." The bodyguards pushed open the kitchen door, but they didn't see Chef Nelson in the kitchen. However, the candles were lit, and there was some fresh meat on the table. To be precise, it was a straight and slender thigh, a female's left leg. He should be planning to deal with the meat. Maybe he has something to do and left? Ghoul bodyguard A thought for a while, and then walked to the table. He picked up a chef's knife and cut a piece of meat from the thawed left leg. He put it in his mouth and chewed slowly. It tastes good. This is food for the banquet. Ghoul bodyguard B shook his head. What are you afraid of? It doesn't matter if a few pieces of meat are missing. What is this? Is that something you are stepping on? Could it be Mr. Nelson's pet? Ghoul bodyguard B said subconsciously. They knew that Mr. Nelson had a habit of raising a large number of spiders and reptiles. However, when he raised his leg, he didn't see any of Mr. Nelson's cute pets. What they stepped on was a chef's hat. This isn't Mr. Nelson's. Ghoul bodyguard B subconsciously picked up the hat and saw that there was a trace of blood on it. Ghoul bodyguard B used his finger to touch some of the blood that hadn't dried yet. He rubbed it a few times and then put it to his nose. His expression changed slightly. This is Mr. Nelson's smell. Why is he? The two ghoul bodyguards looked at each other. At the same time, a slight movement came from the kitchen. It was Mr. Nelson's room. The two ghoul bodyguards silently nodded and then waved their hands. Instantly, weapons slid out of their sleeves. They were sharp blades that could be retracted. At this moment, the two corpse ghost bodyguards slowly approached the door of the kitchen with their weapons. The sound inside suddenly stopped. Because of this, they stopped in front of the door. After a while, bodyguard A nodded and gently pushed the door open. The door wasn't locked, so it opened with a push. The moment the door was opened, a black shadow rushed out. The two ghoul bodyguards jumped in fright and quickly retreated, only to discover that the thing that pounced at them was a long, furry black spider leg. This was Mr. Nelson's pet spider, and it was especially huge. The two ghoul bodyguards obviously knew. They had even seen this pet spider before. Therefore, although they were shocked, they didn't panic too much. It's okay, it's just this spider going crazy. Close the door. Bodyguard A put down the weapon in his hand and shook his head. Maybe it's hungry, however. Before he could finish his words, his eyes instantly widened. He saw that the chest of this ghoul bodyguard was pierced by something sharp. It looked like a sharpened branch, and this branch directly extended out from the body of the huge pet spider inside. It didn't extend out. It pierced through the pet spider's body and then the ghoul bodyguard's body. In an instant, the other ghoul bodyguard turned pale with fright. He wanted to do something, but at this moment, the kitchen door was instantly closed. At the same time, dense roots spread out from the floor, walls, and ceiling of the kitchen. They were like countless poisonous snakes. Ah! The kitchen door was closed, and at that moment a scream came out. But soon, the screams quieted down. After an unknown amount of time, the kitchen door was opened again. Then, something grew out from the crack of the door. It began to cover the floor of the corridor, moving forward little by little. Ah! Mr. Varley suddenly screamed. Then, he looked at the masters around the chessboard in the banquet hall with a smile. At this moment, he was telling a horror story that he had heard before. The reason was that it was too quiet here. They couldn't talk freely while playing games. So, he said that he remembered this horror story and wanted to tell it to everyone. After the female master finished screaming, she found that the person who stabbed her in the back was exactly the same as her. In this dark rainy night, only the lightning flashed through the blinds of the room. The female master not only saw herself, but also saw herself with a hideous smile. Compared to the stab wound, her heart is more fearful. This was a short story about a haunted house. Mr. Varley smiled and looked at everyone, asking, "Do you think there are really two of us in the world?" Miss Gong Lina chuckled at this time. It was her turn to throw the dice. While throwing the dice, she said indifferently, "I can't trust two of myself, but it's not impossible to have two of the same. Wally, don't you have two of the same girls at home?" Of course, Tiff and Tina are twins, and they are a rare conjoined twins. Mr. Varley smiled. "They are my precious property." "Is that so?" Miss Gong Lina threw the dice and then arranged her servants to act. Then she said indifferently, "Lisa, I'm thirsty. Also, can you ask your master to shut up for a while and not continue this story that doesn't sound scary at all?" The butler had to open a bottle of blood-red wine from the table next to him, but he didn't mention the latter half of Miss Gong Lina's words as if he didn't hear it. As for Miss Maid, she began to tease the black dragon and the black hound on the ground. She couldn't throw the action points earlier. It seemed that she was quite bored, so she could only do this to relieve her boredom. After the episode, the game continued. At this time, the dice came in front of the butler who had already poured the wine for Miss Gong Lina. "Lisa, you should join me. You went out of the way." Mr. Varley shook his head at this time. "Did you forget again?" "I don't think so." The butler shook his head at this time, but he couldn't help but hesitate when he saw that Nan Xiaonan's servant card didn't move toward the position of Mr. Varley's servant, Cade. "Maybe there is." "Forget it, I'll go find you," Mr. Varley said indifferently. Mr. Varley then threw the dice, and then let the servant Cade move directly to the position of Nan Xiaonan's servant card. The black dragon and the black hound on the ground suddenly turned over at this time, trying to sell something called cuteness, but Miss Maid just threw a glove to let it pick it up. "I'm so hungry." Chessboard. Elf tribe deep in the temple. A drop of cold sweat quietly slipped from Dr. Gorza's throat. Part of it was because of the pain in his shoulders, and part of it was naturally because of the fluctuation in his heart at this time. Mr. Varley didn't know him. To be precise, the Mr. Varley in the temple didn't know him. But he was obviously Mr. Varley. Many years ago, after defeating the Grand Duke, he was kicked out of the house for more than a month. If this Mr. Varley was the real Varley, then who was the Mr. Varley outside the chessboard? Was it also Varley? Two identical Varleys? No, not two identical Varleys, but two different Varleys. One was the Mr. Varley who only remembered defeating the Grand Duke, and the other was the Mr. Varley who had complete memory outside. But how did he do it? Was it a magic trick? In the Magician Association in the Inhuman domain, there seemed to be rumors that this kind of magic was recorded. Your heart beat a lot faster. You are very nervous, right? Mr. Varley looked at Gores at this time and suddenly said. Dr. Gores calmed down and said, Of course I'm a little nervous. After all, I saw you. So I was surprised and confused. I think so too. Mr. Varley smiled slightly and said, From the moment you saw me, I knew what you were thinking. You must be very curious about why I should be outside the chessboard, as the master, but you saw me here. I really can't hide anything from you, sir. Dr. Gores showed a flattering smile at this time. I wonder if sir can answer this question for me? Of course, I like to answer people's doubts the most. Mr. Varley chuckled at this time, then clapped his hands lightly twice. But it has to be after the game. After the game? Dr. Gores was stunned subconsciously, then his face changed dramatically in an instant. He could feel that both his legs had been entangled by the roots on the ground. They were rapidly spreading upwards, and within a few breaths, his entire body was entangled. Dr. Gores could even feel that these roots began to pierce into his body at this time. He felt that his body was being crazily absorbed at this time, blood, body fluid, all the body water. You, Mr. Varley, you can't kill me, I'm yours. At this moment, the roots even crawled directly into Dr. Gores' mouth and poured into his throat. He could only stare in pain, but he couldn't say anything. At this time, Mr. Wally said calmly, Since you are not my servant, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm not interested in your explanation. But what Mr. Varley didn't expect was that what Mr. Gores desperately wanted to say at this time was not to explain anything, but to, You promise to always be by my side, to hide your trump card, to secretly attack and then turn the tables. Where is he? Where did he go? You lied to me again. Finally, Dr. Gores' palm froze in the air and completely withered. After that, the surrounding fibrous roots expanded again and soon drowned Dr. Girls, who had turned into a dried corpse. Mr. Wally returned to the blindfolded woman on the throne at this time. He reached out and touched the blindfolded woman's cheek, raised his head and chuckled, When are you going to bloom, my goddess? As he spoke, Mr. Varley kissed the blindfolded woman's lips madly. Somewhere in the temple, at this moment, a group of guards was walking over in an orderly manner. Soon, the group of guards stopped in front of a female elf, Mayfair. The entire squad of elven guards called out in unison, Vice Captain. Mayfair nodded expressionlessly and said indifferently, Don't be nervous. I'm on leave today. I'm not on duty, and I'm not checking on your shift. The patrol team leader nodded and immediately said, Deputy Captain, what are you doing? I have nothing to do. I'm just walking around. Mayfair said casually, By the way, have you seen Captain Malik? I have something to ask him. We just saw him again in the morning patrol. The team leader replied respectfully, Perhaps he is preparing for the ritual in the evening. Deputy Captain, you can go to the front hall to find him. Got it. There's nothing else. You can continue your patrol. Mayfair waved her hand. The patrolling elves saluted and left in unison. It was only after the patrolling elves had completely left that Mayfair changed his route. Soon, this elf lady came to the living area of the guards in front of a room. Mayfair looked around. Seeing that there was no one, she took out a key and opened the door. Then she walked into the room. The layout of the room was similar. The only difference was that there was an ice-cold stone bed at the end of the room. There were even shackles on the bed. In addition, in the corner of the room, there was a coffin made of luminous stone. This was Captain Malik's room. Captain, why did you call me here? At the back door of the temple. This was a place with few patrol routes, because it was close to the trial road. Nothing. I just want to discuss with you about the transfer. Captain Malik said indifferently. Transfer? The member of the guard team was surprised. Then, his expression changed and he quickly said, "Captain, did I do something wrong? Did you hear something? Don't listen to the nonsense outside. I didn't peek at Deputy Captain Mayfair taking a bath." "Who?" But at this time, Captain Malak's eyes narrowed, and he sharply looked at the pile of totem pillars that came out of the trial road. The member of the guard team reacted quickly. Almost at the moment when Captain Malak shouted, he pulled out his weapon, turned around, and walked toward the pile of totem pillars. "Captain, I'll go and see." "Ah, you." Something pierced through his chest. He looked down and saw that it was Captain Malak's sword. Puff! The member fell to the ground, but Captain Malak quickly caught him. Then, Captain Malak looked around and brought the corpse into the temple through the back door. Suddenly, a figure slowly walked out of the totem pillars. Her face was full of shock, disbelief, anger, and even fear. She gritted her teeth and walked up. She pushed open the back door of the temple and walked in. ######PS 74/84. Chapter 1806. A bit of sunlight sprinkled down. Dr. Girls suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he opened his mouth and gasped for air, like a person who had just run out of a space without oxygen. He was gasping for air greedily. His face was slightly pale. "Doctor?" When he heard the sound, he felt a wave of dizziness, and his vision started to clear up. Thus, he saw Tina, who was right in front of him, and also saw the silent Mr. Snaff, and Boss Luo, who was calm. Dr. Gores rushed forward and said angrily, "You lied again, that I'm back?" "Yes, we're back, Mr. Gores," Luochio nodded. Dr. Girls, who originally wanted to grab hold of the other party and reason with him, shook his head hard and said subconsciously, "He's really back. What time is it now, Tina?" "Before we met Mayfair, who was shot by the arrow." The maid shook her head. "I was still looking for clues in the forest. My mind suddenly went blank. When I recovered, I was back to this place, this time. What the hell is going on? Didn't they say that time would only be reversed after Mephistopheles, today, or after Mephistopheles' death? But this time, there is still a lot of time. Is it possible that Mayfair is dead?" Sneeve suddenly stared at Dr. Gores and asked, "Where did you go? Why do you look like this after you woke up? What happened between you and him?" At the same time, he also looked at Boss Luo with a hint of distrust in his tone. Dr. Gillis calmed himself down. "I secretly went to the temple with him. In the temple, I was killed by Mr. Wally. At that time, it should be before nightfall. It was probably not long after we first met in Mayfair and started the trial." "Is it really Mr. Wally?" The maid was very surprised. "But why did Master Wally kill you, Doctor?" Dr. Gores shook his head. "This is not the Mr. Wally we know. I don't know the specific reason yet. The only thing I know is that Mayfair's time backtracking is not as simple as our current deduction. In addition, I also saw Mayfair in the temple. Her identity is even that of the vice-captain of the temple guards. She can prove this matter." "Mayfair in the temple." Mr. Sneeve looked at Luochio with confusion. Boss Luo nodded. "What Mr. Gores said is what he saw." "Then tell me what you saw." At this time, Dr. Girth said coldly, "When I died, you must have been watching aside, regardless of whether I was alive or not. I don't care about this for the time being. But if you were invisible all the time, you must have seen more than me." Luochio thought for a while and said, "Basically, after you died, I came back here." "What did you say?" Dr. Girls couldn't help but feel a little surprised. "You mean, if I die, time will also turn back?" "I'm not sure, but what I've experienced so far is true. This statement can't be verified. I can't kill myself here to prove this point." Dr. Gores snorted. "Sorry, I can't believe you. The first time backtracking was when you and Mayfair experienced it together. It was you who said she was killed in the temple. This time, it was also you who watched me die. Mr. Gores, what do you want to say?" Boss Luo asked indifferently. What I want to say is... The doctor gritted his teeth and stared at Boss Luo in front of him. It seemed that he would attack immediately if there was any disagreement. I can't beat him. The doctor quickly calmed down and took a deep breath. Let's try again. This time, no one can act separately. Let's vote. Raise your hand if you agree with me. Tina and Mr. Sneeve looked at each other. Tina raised her hand almost without thinking. Mr. Sneeve also raised his hand after a moment of silence. The boss naturally agreed. Soon, they found Mayfair lying on the ground after being shot by an arrow at the place where they first started. Speaking of which, Miss Tina could not help but ask in confusion, every time we found her injured and unconscious here, why didn't we find out who was the one who injured her? Indeed, all this time, no one had found the culprit. In fact, if it wasn't for someone saving her, based on Mayfair's condition, she wouldn't have been able to hold on for long before dying from excessive blood loss. Dr. Gores checked the wound again. According to the amount of blood loss, it shouldn't have been a long time since she was shot. The culprit should still be nearby. But it's strange that this attack was meant to kill her, which proves that the culprit intended to kill her. But since the culprit intended to kill her, why didn't he finish her off after she was shot? Miss Maid thought along with Dr. Gores's thought, but she couldn't come to a conclusion for the time being. However, this elf lady still had to be saved. Otherwise, time might turn back again. The prompt of chessboard appeared again, but there was no new change. But this time, under the insistence of Dr. Gores, they didn't act separately but decided to guard Mayfair together until she woke up. According to the visualization method she learned in the forbidden area, Nan Xiaonan searched all the way. It was so good to have the tablet fragment as a cheat. Except for the restriction of action points, she could freely choose the direction she wanted to go. Of course, if it was another master, they would have discovered the problem long ago. But in the long run, it was inevitable that Mr. Butler's memory would suddenly return to normal, and he would realize that he had long been out of his control. While thinking, Nan Xiaonan seemed to have bumped into something and had to stop her footsteps. She rubbed her forehead. She bumped into something. Astonishingly, there was an invisible barrier in front of her, directly blocking her path. Nan Xiaonan frowned and extended her hand to wipe it, wiping it all the way. The size of this barrier was actually far beyond her imagination, and even exceeded the range of her current grid's activity. However, the next tablet fragment indicated by the visualization method was on the other side of this barrier. I can't go through. How can I play this game? The immortal witch of the other world's academic faction couldn't help but be dumbfounded. She was at her wits' end. Just as she was about to test if violence would work, a voice suddenly came from behind her. I advise you not to waste your strength. This barrier can't be opened for the time being. A man with a gloomy face slowly walked over. I didn't say that. My master asked me to tell you. You're not. Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth. If her memory didn't fail her, this guy should be a member of the supervision team. The guy who logged into the chessboard as Mr. Varley. Cadillac. Oh yes, that's the name. Nan Xiaonan nodded and then said, Why are you here? She was vigilant. Cadillac said indifferently, Didn't your master tell you? From now on, we'll start to team up. Well, now you're my member. As for your master's right of casting, it has been transferred to Mr. Varley. F***ck. Nan Xiaonan's eyes slightly changed. Butler Lisa transferred the right of action. How could she play this game? Since we're in the same team, let's get to know each other. What's your class and level now? Cadillac asked perfunctorily. Nan Xiaonan had to say, I haven't changed my class level LV2. You haven't changed your class to LV2? Cadillac's perfunctory face instantly turned into a shocked face, saying in disbelief, How did you get here? If I say that I'm destined to be here and I picked up a cheat when I went out, I came here smoothly without any setbacks, and I'm about to reach the peak, would you believe it? Probably luck? Cadillac couldn't help but shake his head and sighed. I thought that having one more servant would increase my combat power, but with your current strength, how can you help me deal with that guy? I'm already happy that you're not a burden. Deal with that guy? Who's that guy? Nan Xiaonan asked subconsciously. Cadillac said indifferently, You've seen it. The strange man and woman who came in at the beginning of the banquet. The man is a follower. He's the one we need to deal with. F***CK. 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 Nan Xiaonan instantly felt dizzy. She misheard. This guy actually wants me to deal with Mr. Luo? That's the void power who directly pressed this subworld's will to the ground for God knows how many times, okay? I'll die, I'll definitely die, he'll kill me. Can I cut the banquet with you? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but look at Cadillac sadly. I still want to be a happy person. You and I can't decide this matter. Cadillac said with some annoyance. Now, our life and death are in the hands of our master. I don't want to be a burden with you. Remember, if you encounter danger, don't think that I will save you. You're on your own now. If there was no other way, even if she had to expose that she could go against her master's orders, she definitely couldn't jump into the fire pit. Nan Xiaonan had an idea in her mind at this time, so she said reluctantly, Okay, then your master, coming all the way to this place, don't tell me it's just to team up with a burden like me? We want to enter the world inside this barrier. Cadillac said indifferently, after entering, I don't know what to do now. You follow me. Nan Xiaonan shook her head. She still looked reluctant, but she was a little happy in her heart. At least this direction did not deviate from her original plan. You have a way to go in? It's Mr. Varley who has a way. Cadillac said coldly, then walked to the front of the barrier and reached out to touch it. This is a chaotic world, a desperate world. A team with ulterior motives that can't even be harmonious on the surface. I hope you can find the source of hope buried in the evil abyss. The clue is elf. Go ahead. It's tiring to work with a male and female team. This chessboard is intentional? Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but roll her eyes, but she met Cadillac's suspicious gaze. She smiled embarrassedly and cleared her throat. I'll cheer for you? Humph. Cadillac snorted. He didn't even turn his head as he walked in first. Once again, Mayfair slowly opened her eyes. What she saw were 4 different faces. She was shocked and subconsciously shrank her body. She said in panic, who are you? The maid took the initiative to say, Don't be afraid, we are adventurers. We met you on the way, so we saved you. Perhaps because they were both women, Tina's words made the elf lady calm down a little. Mayfair felt the pain of her wound at this time, and her face was pale. Thank you for saving me. Dr. Gores, who had decided to get more clues from Mayfair, now had a gentle look. Miss, who hurt you? Mayfair shook her head. I don't know. I just felt a sudden pain and then lost consciousness. I don't know who attacked me, but it might be, what is it? Mr. Sneeve asked quickly. Maybe it's my people. Mayfair shook her head and then asked nervously, What time is it now? How long have I been in a coma? Today, has it passed? It's still today. Dr. Gores said indifferently, You were injured not long ago, and then we saved you. Now it's not even dark yet. I need to do something. Mayfair struggled to get up, and looked at Boss Luo anxiously. Can you help me? Take me to a place? Why are you looking at him? Dr. Gores asked suddenly, Have you met him? Mayfair shook her head. He has a breath that makes nature happy, just like the sunshine. I can feel that he is an upright and selfless person. Obviously, he is a country. Look at his face. Dr. Gores touched his chin subconsciously, but this time he frowned and said thoughtfully, Why is it this Luo guy every time? Is it because of his profession in chessboard? Miss, what do you want us to help you with? Boss Luo thought for a while and asked. Elf Mayfair hesitated at this time. Some things are very important to me, I must record them. Otherwise, I will forget. At this time, everyone suddenly thought of a problem. Mayfair, who was shot by an arrow in the forest, would backtrack every time. And every time, she could only know that she was trapped on the same day when she accidentally walked into the treehouse in the forbidden area and opened the diary. But there was a problem. If Mayfair was only able to know that he had backtracked through the diary, then who was the one who wrote the first diary? #########. PS. As usual. Chapter 1807. The same thing happened again in the treehouse on the periphery of the forbidden area. The elf lady said her life experience, a sacrifice that was about to be sent to the fake god. What Mayfair said this time was no different from what Dr. Gores and the others heard last time. The only difference was that Mr. Sneeve was not thrown out of the treehouse by Mayfair, and Mayfair did not break the floor of the treehouse by stepping on it. One question. Dr. Gores said indifferently, "Miss Mayfair, you don't know that you are experiencing the same day when you wake up every day. You only found this problem after reading this diary, right?" "Yes, what's the problem?" Mayfair asked in confusion. "Here's the problem." Dr. Gores frowned. "Since you will forget everything that happened today when you wake up every day, then why do you believe this thing after reading this diary? Or rather, how does this diary make you believe this thing? You have to know that once today is over, your memory will be cleared, so no matter how many days have passed today, today is a new day for you. The handwriting in this diary is mine, and I even left some things that only I know." At this moment, Mayfair said with a serious face, "Actually, regarding this question of yours, I have also thought about it before. What I want to say is, before I was injured by the arrow, I had already thought about it. In fact, I even had some doubts when I was still alive. But now, I can be certain that this diary must have been written down by me yesterday." "Because you were injured by the arrow?" Dr. Gores was keenly aware of something. "This diary recorded that you were injured by the arrow." Mayfair nodded and said, "That's right, but it's not mentioned in every article. It's only recorded occasionally. So I thought that if someone saved me, then I would be able to record this event. If not, I should have died and returned to the beginning of today. But in fact, this diary is completely blank." The maid moved the diary in front of her and opened it. "Although we saw you write something with our own eyes, the ink disappeared. Nothing is shown here. How did you see it? What are you talking about?" At this time, Mayfair said in surprise, "Every today that I've spent is densely written here. Why can't I see it?" Everyone looked at each other, but they saw that Mayfair's expression was firm and didn't seem to be lying at all. Could it be that the contents of the diary are only accessible to Mayfair? Mr. Sneeve could only come up with such a hypothesis, but he couldn't verify it for the time being. Dr. Gores said at this time, "Miss Mayfair, let's put this aside. Have you ever thought about how the first diary entry was written?" "The first entry." Mayfair opened her mouth at this time and said subconsciously, "What do you mean by how I wrote it down? Of course, it's me myself?" "That's right. Logically speaking, the contents of the first entry should have been written by you who discovered the repetition of time for the first time. But the key is, how did you discover this when you first discovered it? How did you leave a diary to remind the later you?" "I haven't thought about this question. Not yet." Mayfair shook her head at this time. "Today, until I was injured, I only discovered the contents of the diary. I was very confused at that time. Not long after, I was shot and fainted. I didn't have time to think about so many things at all." "Miss Mayfair, can you read the contents of the diary to us?" Luaccio suddenly said at this time, "From the first entry, every sentence, every word. Can you?" "Yes." Mayfair nodded and took back the diary without thinking. She turned to the first page and said slowly, "When you see this paragraph, please don't be surprised. Today, when you woke up in the morning, what you saw was still the basement where you were imprisoned. At this time, you began to think about how to escape from this basement because you were about to be sent to the temple as a sacrifice. How could you let yourself become a sacrifice and be sent to the mouth of that devil? So, just like this, you came to this wooden house, saw this diary, and saw the contents of the diary. This is also the message that I, the you who experienced the same day, left behind. I don't know if tomorrow will come. If tomorrow comes, please write here. If tomorrow doesn't come, please write more things that didn't happen to me in the previous today. Maybe the next today you can find the answer. Ms. Elf's voice stopped, and she looked at everyone. This is the content of the first entry. In fact, the content of every entry is the same from when I woke up in the morning to when I came to the treehouse. I followed the entries in the diary and waited, and when I realized there was such a thing, I wrote them down. At this point, Mayfair couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. But to be honest, to make the next today me believe in the diary, this today me will spend a lot of effort on it. What is written in the diary about waking up after you were shot by the arrow? Tina suddenly asked. Mayfair said, It says that I was saved by an adventurer from the outside world. I will bring this adventurer here and tell him this secret. Then, he will promise to help me solve this puzzle. She looked at the followers again. So, please don't be surprised why I'm telling you this directly. It's very likely that we've met in the past, and I've told you about this before. It's just that, both of us have forgotten about it. What you mean is, we might have appeared in your today in some of the todays recorded in this diary. Mr. Sneeve shook his head. Impossible, including this time, I also. This is the first time they came to this forest. No. Mayfair shook her head. You are Sneeve, he is Dr. Gores. Healer, this is Ms. Tina, and he is Mr. Luaccio. It is recorded in the diary that you saved me and planned to accompany me to find the truth. We also decided to go through the trial road to reach the temple. It is written clearly in the previous diary. They had not introduced themselves since Mayfair woke up this time, but at this time, when they heard Mayfair say their names, they had a strange feeling. This diary, did it really record everything? But it is strange. Mayfair suddenly said. In the past, every time I was shot by an arrow, there was only one adventurer who saved me, and his name was different from yours. Like this time, there are 4 of you, in fact, it is the first time. Well, now it is the second time. What is the name of the adventurer who saved you before? Dr. Gores asked quickly. Gerald. At this moment, Mephistopheles said seriously, according to the records here, the person who saved me every time was an adventurer named Gerald. Impossible. This is impossible. Mr. Sneeve suddenly became agitated. Gerald can't appear so many times. He is dead. It can't be him. There is something wrong with this diary. Mr. Sneeve suddenly grabbed Mayfair's collar and stared at her eyes. The elf lady's reaction was to activate the magic power in her body and directly send Mr. Sneeve flying out of the treehouse. The moment the severely injured elf lady activated her magic power, her body suddenly became soft. The familiar scene made Dr. Gores stunned. He frowned and reached out to catch her. However, the elf lady's dizziness was only a matter of a moment. She pressed her hands on the table to stabilize herself. I am fine. I will be fine after a while. Dr. Gores? It can't be Gerald. It can't be him. But Mr. Snakel had already climbed up again. His head popped in from the door, but his speed was much faster than the previous time when he climbed up again after falling down. At this moment, the maid Tina suddenly made a silent gesture and said in a low voice, Someone is here. Boss Luo's attention was slightly diverted to the outside. Tina said softly, Since I have doubts about the murderer who attacked Mayfair, I secretly used my detection skill. Someone activated my detection skill. Location? Dr. Gores asked directly. Tina quickly told him the location. I will be back soon. Dr. Gores said indifferently, I will go personally this time. After saying that, he activated his stealth skill and instantly turned into a shadow and disappeared from the treehouse. But soon, Dr. Gores returned to the treehouse again without bringing anyone back. "What did you find?" Boss Luo asked curiously. Dr. Gores shook his head. "He should have run away, but I found this thing." As he spoke, he opened his palm, only to see a piece of cloth on his palm. It should have been left behind by accident after being alerted by the detection magic. "This seems to be." Mayfair picked up the piece of cloth and looked at it carefully. She frowned. "A piece of the uniform of the temple guards." "The temple again." Dr. Gores pondered for a while and suddenly said, "Miss Mayfair, are you familiar with the temple?" "Very familiar." Mayfair nodded. "When I was a trainee, I was always trained in the temple. Except for the inner hall, I am familiar with the other places." "Just a trainee?" Dr. Gores asked suddenly. Mayfair was startled and said subconsciously, "I should have become an official member, but when I found out that the god was a fake, I secretly escaped. I planned to expose the fake god, but no one in the village believed me and even caught me. Soon after, I was chosen as a new sacrifice and was imprisoned. Today, I found a chance to escape." "Are you sure that you are the only Mayfair? There is no other Mayfair? And you are the vice-captain of the temple guards?" Dr. Gores stared at her and asked in a deep voice. "I don't quite understand what you mean." Mayfair was astonished. "What do you mean, I am the only Mayfair? How can I be the vice-captain of the temple guards? I didn't even take the assessment of the training, and I am not even an official member." Dr. Gures muttered to himself at this time, "You're also like this. Mr. Varley in the inner hall of the temple was also the same. What do you mean by that?" Mayfair was puzzled. Dr. Gores shook his head. "Nothing. I am just a little confused by this diary. Just think of my head as a rope full of knots." Mayfair nodded. "It's okay. When I saw the diary for the first time, my head was even more confused than yours. Let's not talk about this. It seems that we need to explore the temple again." Dr. Gores sighed. "We have to do something. What do you all think?" "I want to see the real face of the fake god," Tina suddenly said. "Me too," Mr. Sneeve said expressionlessly. Boss Luo suddenly said, "But I want to go to the village to have a look." "What's there to see in the village?" Dr. Gores frowned. Luo Chiu said slowly, "The hint is to let us find out the reason why Miss Mayfair has been reincarnated until this day. I think, since the temple didn't give us more clues for the time being, and instead made us more suspicious, it's better to let it go and change our way of thinking. Of course, this is just a suggestion. Maybe we can act separately for now." Dr. Gores said in a low voice, "No," I said, "from now on, we have to act together. I won't let you disappear from my sight, and I won't let you use the invisibility scroll. Never." "Since that's the case," Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "This is for you, Mr. Gores." Boss Luo opened his palm and threw a scroll to Dr. Gores. The moment he received it, he sensed the content of the scroll. It was the invisibility scroll that Boss Luo used last time. Are you really giving this to me?" Dr. Gores looked at Luochio in disbelief, as if he was caught off guard by his move. "Isn't it already in your hands, Mr. Gores?" Boss Luo smiled. Dr. Gores was silent. He thought for a while and said, "Okay, anyway, we still have some time today. Let's go to the village and see if there are any new discoveries." As he spoke, the doctor stuffed the scroll into his lapel. When he was in the temple, this guy used this scroll to hide and watch the show. Captain Malik, Mr. Wally, and even the monster-like goddess didn't notice it. This is a treasure. I'll trust you one last time. ########PS 7584